All members are present. We have a quorum. It's a great day in Kershaw County. It's a great day in this all-America county. We're called to order. I want to first wish our Councilman Snodgrass a happy birthday. Don't look a day over 90. But on a serious note, I'd ask for a moment of silence. Being Memorial Day, we just lost one of our volunteer firemen at a funeral today, aptly presided over by Keith, Ray, and the team. And just for a moment of silence, please, for Stephen Campbell. Amen.
Amen.
With that, we're called to order, and I'd ask you to stand for the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Connell, please.
Let's pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful for our many blessings. We pray for wisdom as we make decisions regarding Kershaw County. We pray for charity in our hearts to lift up those who struggle. We pray for the Campbell family, that they might be comforted in this time of mourning. And we pray for all those who struggle or otherwise afflicted. We pray for healing. Please help us to lift up and serve others. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you much indeed, Mr. Connell. Good words on this Memorial Day, day after Memorial Day. With that, we go to public comments. I asked Mr. DeBose to pull out the list, and I will read in some detail what the governing guidelines are of this community. One, public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to share information with council. It is not a time for debate with or questions and answers from council. It is a time for council to receive input. It is not a time for a council response. In short, during public comment, council will listen to public comment but not comment on those comments. Two, offensive and inappropriate comments will not be tolerated, and comments should be limited to statements and rhetorical questions. Three, if a group would like to speak to council, we request that a spokesperson be selected and that this person indicate the group he or she is representing on the sign-up sheet and in his or her comments. Four, public comment is a time to discuss issues and not individuals, and I'll emphasize the next sentence. Other avenues exist for individual personnel complaints. And that was the reason I had to cite that was something of last time when we had an issue of decorum. Item number 5, public comment period is limited to 30 minutes with 5 minutes maximum allowed per speaker. Mr. DeBose, can you do the honors?
Mr. Chairman, the first person signed up is Jim Steele.
Mr. Steele, sir. And thank you for your service, Jim.
And only 3 people signed up, so they all get 5
Thank
minutes.
you.
Okay, what I'm here to talk about tonight's proposed financing of
Is that mic activated?
other professional firefighters.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, I'll learn how to talk into this thing. Okay, we all know that circumstances come up where we need additional services in the county. And as Chairman Burns aptly said a while back, anything new costs something. We all realize that. The question is, how do we pay for it? Okay, those people needing those services in a certain area, do they pay for it, or does everyone in the county do it? If everyone in the county is benefiting from a new service or a new requirement, then the county should pay for it. Okay, but in the case of the firefighters, how do we do it? And I'm sure you're all aware, whether it's admitted or not, we have a lot of people, hundreds, perhaps thousands, in this county that live on a very, very fixed income. Okay, and while $25 for addition on a parcel of land, another $25 on each vehicle, it's just a drop in the bucket. Okay, but when you look at all the federal, state, and local things that have happened lately, penny sales tax, okay, an increase in the property tax bill, okay, and all these other things, $25 for this, $25 for that, it's just a drop in the bucket. But gentlemen, there's people out there that are already having to make decisions every month whether they buy all the food they want or whether they buy the medications that keep them alive. Okay? So when you start thinking about it, please keep these people in mind that, yeah, this is another drop in the bucket, but the bucket's getting pretty full for a lot of people. Okay? So if people want a service, why don't they pay for it? I mean, it's just like the sewer fund that we're all paying for, okay? People have been paying for this sewer fee, even though it's only a drop in the bucket, okay? They've been paying for it a long time. And them and their grandchildren will never see the use of that sewer fee, or the sewer, okay? So please keep those people in mind when you think about this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Mr. DeBose?
Second person signed up is Tom Webb.
Mr. Webb?
I remember when we didn't have a sales tax. Nothing. Whatever the price was on something, that was it. And they put on a penny sales tax and said, that'll be gone pretty soon. We'll take that off. I bought a hamburger over in Richland County recently, and the sales tax on that hamburger was more than the price of a hamburger when McDonald's first opened up. Because I realized we're going to have inflation. But it bothers me that it seems to be one of the chores of government is to raise money any way they can. And there's always cheese in the trap. And I'm wondering, because I'm skeptical, I mean, penny sales tax has gone way, way up. I'm skeptical. Will this fire district turn into a tax district? Is that behind it too? Everybody wants fire service, and we don't want it, though, if we don't need it. And in my case, we've been depending on the South Carolina State Forestry Commission. They come out and put out woods fires and brush fires, and they will send a crew, and it's all over the state. We already have that. For us, we live in an old house that ever caught on fire, it'd just be gone. This is not going to do us any good. But we are going to have to pay an awful lot for it, more than a drop in the bucket, because we have been buying little parcels of land around us. When a neighbor wanted to sell it, we have bought it, and it's going to cost us around, with the 3 vehicles we have and the parcels of land, close to $700 to fund something that we don't really need. We already have fire service. But I understand other people need it, and I don't mind helping out a little bit. But I'm just a little skeptical, as I generally am, of people in government trying to do something good. It's one of those things that Mark Twain said. It frightened him when people got together and decided to do something good, because they didn't know where to stop. So fire extinguishers. If we want to do something about fire safety, I would suggest one of the things you could do for homeowners and shop owners all through the county is to promote the ownership and training with fire extinguishers. Get them to get the right kind of fire extinguishers. Tell them where to put them. And you need more than one. You certainly don't want it where the fire is going to be right there in the kitchen. You need more than one. And the fire crews now that we have in Kershaw County would be glad to train people on the use of fire extinguishers. That's something that can be done right away in most cases, and you might not even need to call a fire truck. Anyway, I appreciate a chance to speak to you, and want to mention Memorial Day as you have. We had some fine people die, put everything on the line, come away terribly injured to give us the freedom that we have and to defend them, and maybe we can pass them on. But it appears to me that the American spirit is much more fragile than we first thought, than I ever thought. And you can see that in the news when you look at who is running for president now. We have out-and-out socialists that want to take away our country from us, pull it out from under us, take away our Constitution. There's something very wrong. We have a very fragile American spirit that needs to be exercised a little bit. It's an endangered species. And when government does too much for people here, there, and yonder, rather than encouraging them to do it for themselves, put out their own fires, in effect, I think that that does not promote this healthy American spirit, can-do spirit that our parents and grandparents had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Mr. Bose?
The third and last person to sign up is Jeff Maddox.
Mr. Maddox?
Good evening, Council. During my last comments at the last meeting, I was interrupted by the chairman and told we, the people, cannot use the word steal in our comments. This action of restricting freedom of speech prompted me to send the chairman the following email, which I have received no response. This email was sent last Friday. I apologize for using the word steal in my public comments during the council meeting on May 14th. I was completely unaware that the word had been prohibited from use when addressing a government body. Again, I apologize for my ignorance. As you stated, Mr. Maddox, we won't use words like steal when we are in a government body. Being that as it may, it behooves me to inquire if you can provide the public with a list of words that may have been banned from being spoken when addressing a government body. This list would provide the people with the necessary tools to comply with the chairman's speech restrictions. How is the public supposed to know what has been banned if we do not know what words have been banned by the council? As council and the public were advised by the county attorney, Mr. DeBose, that it is the chairman who determines what words can and cannot be used when addressing this government body. And as such, it would be the chairman who should provide the people with a comprehensive list of those words so that the public does not violate the chairman's protocol. Perhaps the chairman should require all public comments to be submitted 5 days prior to the meeting for a speech review by the chairman or an independent speech czar appointed by the chairman. Thank you in advance for your cooperation in resolving this avoidable conflict. I believe both would prefer to avoid any further conflicts as occurred during the meeting on May 14th. The fact that I have had no response is completely unacceptable, but no real surprise. Council does not care what we have to say, and we deserve no response. Free speech is dead. Words are banned. Public comment is limited, and dissent is stifled. Taxes and fees are unilaterally raised, and $17 million in corporate handouts are sold as bringing prosperity through public-private partnerships called economic development. Now council tells us they care so much for our safety that we must fork over $25 per vehicle and $25 per parcel of land, totaling $1.7 million a year to ensure fire protection for all. This is such a great idea, council refuses to ask the people if they support the new extortion demands. Proof yet again, this council does not care what the people have to say. Corporate handouts and water parks are far more important than individual liberty and free speech. The amount of tax increases over the past 5 years alone laid a sad truth to bear. Cancel taxes today to borrow tomorrow and guarantee the debt of our children. Council will use these new fees as a stepping stone to borrowing millions to build beautiful firehouses with brand new equipment and claim how wonderful they are. What will not be said is that by the time the debt is paid, all those wonderful things will be obsolete, and the debt paid for those things will be double the amount borrowed. What we have is a totalitarian regime with a who will dictate the terms of our enslavement and restrict our once free speech to silence our voices of resistance, robbing the future to pay for the present in order to create a legacy and secure re-election. Mother Russia would be proud. And so freedom dies surrounded by a collective with good intentions and armed with a gun. Those who give up freedom for security deserve neither freedom nor security, despite the claims of this council. Continue to tax and spend, gentlemen, and you will be committing political suicide as the people finally see the emperor has no clothes. When is enough enough? Perhaps when the people are broke and have no more for you to steal for your utopian dreams.
Thank you, Mr. Maddox. Mr. DeBose.
That concludes the sign-up list.
And that concludes public comments. We move now to an adoption of the agenda. The agenda is on the board and also on your tablets, gentlemen. Can we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Make a motion to adopt the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Tucker, a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Gardner. Any discussion on the agenda? All right, let's move to a vote. All those in favor, so signify. And it's unanimous, and the agenda is approved. And we move now to a series of 2 public presentations. Now, the first one is the Ag and Art Tour, introduced by Ms. Susie Sale. Please.
Chairman Burns, members of County Council, Mr. Carpenter, thank you for allowing us to be here today to talk about a really terrific thing that goes on in Kershaw County. We can't say enough about what happens on our farms and what happens in our agricultural life here in Kershaw County. As you know, the Ag and Art Tour in Kershaw County is a free self-guided tour of farms and farmers markets featuring local artisans at every stop. The tour concept was created as a product of Clemson University in conjunction with our regional South Carolina Parks, Recreation, and Tourism partner, the Old English District Commission. Our county tour this year takes place on Saturday and Sunday, June 8th and 9th. There are 10 counties participating. For Kershaw County, this is our 4th year, which has proven to be a very rewarding agritourism event for our county, with several thousand tour goers around the county each year visiting us on that particular weekend. And this doesn't include the other thousands that visit our everyday agritourism sites, the sites that are South Carolina certified and also are on the South Carolina Agritourism Passport Trail. And that includes Old McCaskill's Farm in Rembert, Goat Daddy's Farm in Elgin, and Boykin Mill Farms in Boykin. All of the various farms and ancillary sites are joining us here today are the reason why Kershaw County Ag and Art has been so successful, because of their participation and their dedication and creativity over and above the things they do on a day-to-day basis and the individual events that they hold. They continue to put their energy and investment in seeing to it that Kershaw County is highlighted on the Ag and Art Tour. And for this reason, it's the Old English District has awarded Kershaw County their Attraction of the Year Award. It gives me great pleasure, Chairman, to present this to you.
All right.
Put it on your head.
It's dangerous looking, but it's a wonderful thing. We know you'll want to express your appreciation today to all of the members and also to present their attraction awards to them as well, which Ms. Ziegler has. But let me call them up here to you first, please. Wayne Belger, representing Boykin Mill Farms.
You want to have them all up here for a photo?
Sure.
Yeah, come on up, Wayne.
Kathy McCaskill with Old McCaskill's Farm. Josh Southers with Goat Daddy's Farm.
Come on up.
Kathy,
Come on over here. Ham and Stephanie Tedderton with Quite Content Urban Farm in downtown Camden. Teresa and Brian Motley with Raintree Farms and Raintree Jacks Rescue. And also Dorothy Butterton with the Kershaw County Farmers Market. Always a big participant. And want to especially thank the county for sponsoring this event. The city of Camden also sponsors. We've had Belger Farms be a sponsor. But this year we have a brand new sponsor and we're very proud of it. And it's the folks at Ag South with Spencer Floyd. When you're ready, Chairman, if you want to present them with their awards. And let me just say before we wrap up, there's some goodies out on the table outside for everybody to enjoy. Please enjoy. Wayne, you want your bag of goodies? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This is a brand new sponsor for us this year and an ancillary site, and it's Triangle Hardware in Dusty Bend. Thank you very much. Y'all come on up. Thank you, Donald.
I am standing up.
Want to hold the trophy?
Right there behind Wayne. How you doing, Wayne?
Congratulations, everybody. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Appreciate you. Look at this chair before I fall down. I know that's right. Where's Wayne? Wayne,
Wayne.
where's the shrimp?
Congratulations to all our farmers. Thank you.
Hold on, Mr. Chairman, we're getting served right now. Can you?
Are we getting some food?
Yes, sir. Can you give us just a minute?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, all right, we get some food.
And Mr. Chairman,
Thank
the past
you.
one that said there was an old goat up at the podium, I guess. New meaning now.
Well, as this is happening, I wanted everybody to remember that Kershaw County is the #1 most profitable, right, Martin? We checked on this. #1 most profitable farming community in the state.
Wow.
And Kershaw County is number 17 nationwide as the most profitable county in the United States of America. So we shouldn't forget, and we should always remember the contribution of agriculture. I got a dog biscuit. I guess I eat that, huh?
Yes.
That's for you. I don't have a dog.
That's right, Miss Mary.
You have a dog.
It's all natural ingredients, so you'll be all right.
Yeah. Give that to Cam. Pass it down. Pass it down. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'll do it.
Now, those are dog cookies, y'all.
Yeah, oh, these are all dog cookies. The back of my dog biscuit says it's a dog-eat-dog world, and you're wearing dog biscuit underwear.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susie, and thanks to the whole team. Well done. I neglected to say during public presentations, questions, and discussion are welcome, and as the case in the next item on our agenda, which is another public presentation, item number 2 on the board, Air Methods Community Partnership at tab A. We had a nice read ahead on that. Mr. Jones, you want me to introduce this, or shall I go ahead?
I will, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
You don't mind. Thank you. I want to ask April Watt to come up, please. She's been an ER nurse for almost 20 years. She lives in Kershaw County. She's a resident. She sits on several community boards, to include the Free Clinic Board. She loves serving the community and the underprivileged. She has been married to her husband for 11 years, and he is currently employed with the Department of Defense. And, you know, on this day, Memorial Day, I think this is very appropriate. I'd like her husband to stand. He's a 2-time Purple Heart recipient.
Oh,
And I don't want to embarrass anybody, but this man was shot twice. And, you know, we appreciate your service and what you represent.
Amen.
Thank you so much. And having said that, April, I'm going to turn it over to you. First of all, let me just say one quick thing. April called me about this. I had called her maybe a few months ago, a year ago, about a couple of constituents that had called me and were concerned about the amount of money they had been charged with the helicopter flight, the trauma. I think they were in trauma, whether they had to be flown out. But anyway, it was a huge amount of money. And she remembered that. And she called me and wanted me to come in and sit down with these folks and her, and I did. I was only there about 15, 20 minutes. And what they started to say to me sounded so good. I said, no, we need to stop. I want the entire council to hear this. I want our county attorney to hear this, our administrator, you know, so we can all get it at one time. So I look forward to hearing what you have to present tonight. Thank you so much.
April, please. And just at that point, we're trying to limit this to 15 minutes, but it's an important topic, and we will be liberal in our timekeeping. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bring that microphone up so people can hear it on the
Hear me now?
Facebook.
I
Yeah.
really never have that problem.
You never have that problem, April.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all council members for giving me the opportunity and the privilege tonight to take up your time and your attention. As I've stated, if you don't know me, my name is April Walk. I've been an emergency room nurse for almost 20 years. I've worked both in Richland and Kershaw County. I've personally experienced many great things in the emergency room, and I've personally experienced many terrible things in the emergency room. I believe one of the saddest events occurred 2 weeks ago when a patient wanted to choose death or possibly death versus being flown for the care that he needed due to the cost and being afraid of losing his home or his car. So I want to share a couple facts with you. South Carolina is third in the nation for fatalities due to car wrecks. That being said, accidents are the third leading cause of death in South Carolina, only to be topped by heart disease and cancer. As of 2016, Kershaw County sits above the South Carolina state average for motor vehicle deaths, reporting 38 deaths per every 100,000 citizens versus the state average of 21 deaths per every 100,000 citizens. In 2018, Kershaw County transported 124 patients via emergent medical air transport. Of those, 84 were Kershaw County residents. 67 of the flights were transported per the request of EMS in the county, who got to the scene and deemed these people have what we call the golden hour of trauma, or they're having a heart attack and they need to be flown. The other 57 patients were transported from our local hospital. The average charge for a flight from the helicopter service for medical transport is $26,000. Just looking at Kershaw County alone, in 2018, that would be $3,244,000. Some time ago, I received a phone call from Councilman Jones. He was concerned regarding the cost that one of his constituents had endured following a medical transport by helicopter. This prompted a review of what could be done to assist all Kershaw County residents or each and every one of your constituents or family members. Should you find yourself in need of emergency air transport, you, your family, or someone you know led to the meeting with LifeNet. LifeNet is an air medical helicopter service who has actually had a base in Kershaw County for the past 13 years at Camden's Airport. They assist all residents of Kershaw County in their most crucial time of need, and they are here tonight to provide their idea of how they, in partnering with Kershaw County Council, can help meet the needs of Kershaw County citizens with emergent air medical transport in the most cost-effective manner. Thank you.
Thank you, April. If you could introduce yourselves, gentlemen, as you come forward, please. And first of all, let me, on behalf of council, thanks for what you do for our county, and thank you also for being a business in our county. We want to make you successful. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for allowing us to do business in your county. My name is Jason Bover. I'm the area manager for South Carolina, oversee the 3 bases that we have here in South Carolina. I've been with Air Methods for 13 years. Prior to that, I flew with Kershaw at Richland Hospital, so I've been in the air medical industry for 18 years, 25 total in the medical field. And I worked with April in the emergency room at Richland for a couple years also. But just wanted to give you a quick overview of who Air Methods is to let you know who you're doing business with. Air Methods started in 1980 with 1 helicopter in Denver, Colorado, and over since till 2019, we have over 300 bases throughout the 48 states and in Haiti, and we have 400 helicopters and fixed-wing transports. So you are dealing with a big company with many assets who've been around for a very long time. Since 1980, well, in 2017, we did over 70,000 transports in 2017. We have 130,000 hours of flight hours, safe flight hours. So pretty much in essence, you're getting the airborne ICU. You know, we bring everything that the ER and the ICU has, we bring it to you, to the bedside, to the roadside, where the patient's in need. We have monitors, ventilators. We only respond if a physician calls us or if first responders call us. We just don't go launch and go fly and pick somebody up. We got to be requested by one of your services. So that's Air Methods in an overview. LifeNet's been here for 13 years, originally started in Columbia, Orangeburg, and Camden. We have expanded since then. We do have one in Conway, South Carolina. So if we can go to the next. So those are the 3 bases that we have now. Unfortunately, we had to close down 2 bases because of the financial viability of them. But we have one in Kershaw, one in Orangeburg, and one in Conway. And we're 24/7, 365 days. Each aircraft is staffed by a pilot, a nurse with a minimum of 3 years of experience, and a paramedic with a minimum of 3 years experience. All of our pilots have to have a minimum of 3,000 flight hours, so it is expensive to run this operation and to be available 365 days. So that's an overview of Air Methods and LifeNet. Now I'll turn it over to Jeremy.
Thank you. Jeremy, let me have your full name. This is not a court of law, but we just want to record who you are.
Next slide. Good evening, Council. Thank you once again for having us. My name is Jeremy Roberts, and I am an employee of Air Methods, and I am the outreach coordinator for the Eastern Seaboard. So I represent every state on the East Coast from Maine all the way down to Florida. I myself live in Florida. I've been a firefighter, paramedic in rural northern Florida for approximately 12 years, and working with Air Methods in multiple different capacities, such as a flight paramedic, clinical appeals specialist for our billing office, and now in the outreach role. I'm here to talk to you about our patient advocacy program tonight. Our patient advocacy program was founded back in January of 2017. Can you all hear me? Sorry. And at that point, it was at that point that we realized through all of the bad press and media via Facebook, the national news chains, that we were doing our billing practices wrong. Our practices, we were very aggressive, almost heartless, to the point of going after patients for the monies, for the flights. And I'm here to tell you that we were wrong, and we recognize that we were wrong, and we made that change. In 2017, when our patient advocacy program was founded, it was founded on the basis of walking our patients from the second that we are dispatched to that patient all the way through to getting that claim resolved with their insurance company. A vast number of our claims are denied multiple times before they are actually paid, and a substantial portion of this does have to do with regulation changes brought on by the Affordable Care Act as it was enacted in 2014. The vast majority of our patients that we see, approximately 65 to 70%, are on Medicare and Medicaid, and they're on fixed incomes or they're uninsured. Leaving the other 30% who are self-pay or insured privately through plans such as Blue Cross Blue Shield, Humana, United Healthcare, essentially taking care of the costs for everybody that has flown. So 30% of our patients cover approximately 75% of the costs overall, with Medicare filling in the other 25% as the numbers fall. First thing we did with our advocacy program, we wanted to set out to go in network with major insurers. Emergency transportation, both air and ground, as a large part, is not in network with the majority of the insurance companies across the country. This is not a situation that's isolated to South Carolina, but across the country, if you call 911 and have to be taken to the hospital by ambulance or air ambulance, majority of the time that claim is considered out of network.
Can you just stop there, because this is a term of art everybody should understand. In-network and out-network. Could you just run through that real quick, just for further understanding?
Yes, sir, not a problem. So an in-network provider, the provider themselves has negotiated with the insurance company. They've negotiated a specific rate that, although the company may charge X number of dollars, the insurance company will only pay that contracted amount. The patient's only responsible for any co-payments, co-insurance, and deductibles. Whereas out-of-network, your coverage different are usually vastly different, sometimes only 40% coverage. In some cases, you're not covered at all if you're out of network, leaving the patient responsible for the entire bill. In an emergency situation, Chairman, nobody knows that if they are in or out of network with the provider in an emergency situation.
And they don't care.
Correct. Yeah. No, and we don't either. And we say we respond to our patients at the request of fire rescue and EMS or the hospitals that we serve. And we respond to these patients without regard for their ability to pay their claims. That's settled after the fact. But as far as negotiating in-network agreements, I am proud to say that we do currently sit in network with approximately 30 to 35% of all major insurers across the country, with the vast majority of that 35% being achieved within the last 24 months. We are currently in network with Blue Cross and Blue Shield in the state of South Carolina, as well as Blue Cross and Blue Shield or Anthem in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, Maryland, New York State, Massachusetts, Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan. So where a lot of the visitors to the state of South Carolina come from, especially the snowbirds. But as far as the advocacy goes, we have a team of dedicated patient advocates in our billing office, which is located in San Bernardino, California. Each of these advocates is assigned to a specific department. So there's an advocate in the Medicare department, the Blue Cross department, United Health, and then there's another department for the other smaller payers that we deal with. When it comes to charity, as many of you may know, pretty much any health system across the country, they offer charity care to their patients. They determine this level of charity care by running a patient through a financial algorithm. And once they do that, that determines the amount of charity that a patient may be eligible for, and that may be anywhere from 0 up to 100% cost. When it comes to the charity care policy, Air Methods and our billing team and our advocacy team, we will follow any charity program that has been established by the hospital. So if a patient is flown to Prisma Health in Columbia and they've been determined to have 80% charity care, we as a company will also follow that same charity care guideline, which takes 80% or whatever has been determined off of the bill after insurance. And the last section here is a simplified correspondence. I spoke earlier and stated that we as a company we were wrong with how we were billing our patients and working with our patients to get our claims resolved. On the very first notice that went out to a patient, that notice included the total number of the bill of what the charges were to the insurance company, and it didn't say whether they have paid or not at that point. But you may see, a bill into the tens of thousands of dollars, and oh, by the way, at the bottom, here's a credit card information if you'd like to pay that before it went to the insurance. Now, our billing statements, as you can see here, you see 5 arrows directed across the middle of that page. The first step, every patient that's flown by our company, they receive a letter from the patient advocate in the department, wherever their insurance lies. And this letter is very empathetic and simply states, "We are sorry that you had to use our service. Please understand that we are here to help you. feel free to reach out to me, whoever that patient advocate may be, and that is a direct line, not a 1-800 number, but a direct line to that patient advocate in our billing office. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Patients get updated statements as we move through the billing process. Certain forms are needed to submit claims, such as signatures from the patient or the patient's family member to submit claims or act on the patient's behalf if we're submitting an appeal if the claim has been denied. By the time you get to the 4th arrow from the left, that is when the patient finally sees a number on a statement. At that point, the patient has finally reached a point where their insurance has been contacted, the claim has been submitted, and their claim has been paid. At that 4th arrow is where the patient now sees what they may be responsible for. Any patient that's, at that point, any patient that's in network with the providers that we have currently gone in network with, at that point, they're only responsible for their co-insurance, their co-payments, or their deductibles, which those are always, they have to pay those contractually per their agreement with their insurance provider. Any patient who works with our advocate through the entire program, and I must absolutely stress that the patients and their family, when they get that first written correspondence or that first touch phone call from our advocacy department, please do not ignore those phone calls, do not ignore those letters, because the information in there is vital to getting the claim paid and working with the insurance company to get it resolved without any additional stress on the patient or their patient family. To share with you 2 brilliant success stories of our patient advocacy program to this point. We had one in Live Oak, Florida, which is in north central Florida near the intersection of I-75 and Interstate 10, a patient that was flown with a stroke. After the fact, we were actually in network with her provider, but her provider failed to pay the claim appropriately. One of our advocates worked with the patient and Humana directly to get the claim resolved, and approximately 2 phone calls, that patient's claim was paid in full, leaving that patient with 0 balance. The other success story that we have, I can share with you, is out of New York State. A patient was flown with a critical illness to a tertiary care facility, and after that flight, that patient received that first touch phone call and that first touch, the new billing statement that you see on the screen before you. Those, after approximately 6 months after that patient was flown, she received a letter in the mail from a collections company stating that the entire balance had been forwarded to collections company and was now due to her. That patient went to that hospital's administration and made a complaint stating, I was having a severe medical emergency and I had to be flown. Why am I facing a bill? The hospital administration reaches out to our business team in New York State, who reaches out to our billing team in California, and was able to determine that multiple written correspondences were sent to the patient, multiple phone calls were made to the patient because they needed a simple signature because they could not submit the claim without a signature. That information was returned to the hospital administration, who in turn had the patient contact our advocacy program in California. Working with the patient, getting the proper signatures, that claim was submitted for the first time and paid in full, leaving no balance to that patient. And I must stress once again, any patient who works with our patient advocates through the entire process and does not ignore that written correspondence or ignore those phone calls will never be left with a large outstanding balance bill other than their co-payments, co-insurance, and deductibles, which are required by law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Chairman, Town Council members. I'm Patrick Lamontine. I'm the account executive for South Carolina. Unlike these two, I haven't been around with LifeNet as long. I spent my career with the Red Cross and switched over and became part of this team about a month ago. So I'm still learning a bit, but I'm appreciating the work that we're doing, and it's a nice transition from the work I've done with the Red Cross and the Blood Services side of the house. I'm going to take you to the next slide and talk to you about our community partnership program. I wanted to start out with a little basics about LifeNet and Air Methods so you know exactly what we do day in and day out for the citizens of our community. And also so you could learn a little bit about what we've done in the last 3 years to change over the processes that Jeremy has just detailed for you. And because of that, it has enabled us to be able to be better stewards for our community, for the patients that have to be transported due to the types of medical treatments that were necessary. The Community Partnership Program is a way for counties to provide financial assistance to to the residents that require air medical transport without paying a large upfront sum of money that would go towards a membership. Many of other air ambulances have memberships that are an annual membership where you would pay in, and that would help cover the cost through a year, but it's a lump sum payment up front. Air Methods also used to go with that strategy until we went in network with a lot more of the private insurers, and also before we had our patient advocacy program. So we've started to roll out our community partnership program in place of it, in place of the memberships. We feel that the citizens and the counties shouldn't have to depend on memberships in order to feel comfortable about the transports that they might require if they're in a serious accident or have a serious medical condition and need inter-hospital transports. With the implementation of the patient advocacy program and also with the signing of the in-network contracts that we have with the private insurers, the out-of-pocket expenses for patient transports has drastically been reduced. As Jeremy had already mentioned, 70% of our transports involve patients that have Medicare or Medicaid or are uninsured. With Medicare and Medicaid, the reimbursements are completely set. With or without memberships, there's set reimbursements amounts already for Medicaid and Medicare patients. So it's not really necessary even to have a membership for those patients. For those that are uninsured, our patient advocacy program utilizes flexible financial assistance programs to help minimize their out-of-pocket expenses. Nationally, patients transported by Air Methods, since we have gone in network and have also developed the patient advocacy program, they're typically seeing an average out-of-pocket cost of $400 to $600 for their transport, which is quite significant compared to the overall cost of what is incurred to run a base, to have the flights to transport those patients. Part of the community partnership program, there are no upfront costs to the county or the citizens of the county to be a part of the program. As part of the program, the county would determine if they want to set aside, internally have a certain amount of money budgeted each fiscal year to cover any air medical costs that are remaining for their citizens up to a pre-negotiated amount with Air Methods and LifeNet. In addition to that, invoices are sent only to the county for any remaining out-of-pocket expenses. So to go a little deeper with that, if the county, let's just throw a number out there, and if the county budgets $50,000 towards air medical transport for their citizens, but throughout that year, the citizens and the costs associated with medical transport for the citizens only is $30,000. The remaining amount of that money that you budgeted stays within the county, can be used for other expenditures, and never comes to us unless we invoice you for any outstanding out-of-pocket costs. So if you'll move on to the next slide, it'll give you some basic numbers. These are, some of them are estimates based on past amount of transports that we've seen within Kershaw County for their residents. In the past, there used to be a membership fee based on the population base. For Kershaw County with 65,036 residents, the cost for a membership would have been $162,590. Air Methods is not doing memberships any longer. And it's a beautiful thing, because if you look deeper into these numbers that I'll go into, you'll see that through our private insurance contracts and through the patient advocacy, we have listed in the third column expected per transport. So that's the expected out-of-pocket cost for different pay classes, for the different type of reimbursements. So for Medicaid, there is no additional costs associated with the transport after Medicaid settles up on the reimbursement for those patients. Medicare, there are some copays and deductibles that that can average around $375. For government insurance, the GINs, the average is about $70 out of pocket. For in-network private insurance, the average is about $225. And then for out-of-network private insurance and for self-pay or uninsured, Air Methods has set a cap of $700 out-of-pocket cost towards the patient or the county if the county was willing to cover those costs through this partnership. If you look at the fourth column, it goes into the total cost. So as you can see, the bottom line right there is the highlighted area in green, $33,195. That's an estimate because obviously flights are fluid. You don't know how many patients, how many citizens are going to need air medical transport in the next year. But if we base it on what we've seen in the past, the number of transports we've seen in the past for your citizens, we would suggest that you budget at least $33,195 to cover those past expenditures, past out-of-pocket costs, which is a far cry from what we've seen in those memberships before. And the beauty of it is all the money that's budgeted stays in the county and is only paid for the flights that occur, the out-of-pocket costs that remain for the flights that occur. So compared to the membership fees of the past, the savings are $129,395 if everything is the same as it has been in the past. Two things to note that we wanted to bring up was that since we signed or went in network with Blue Cross Blue Shield on April 1st, those numbers really aren't reflected in the in-network private insurance row right there. So we expect that the out-of-network private insurance costs will go down because more people will be in network because of our relationship with Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And then the other asterisks that were on the green section, the shaded area, say that the actual county costs are dependent on actual flights. So that could go up, it could go down, of course. So it just gives you a good visualization if this was an opportunity that the county was willing to take to partner with LifeNet and Air Methods to add a benefit for the citizens. It could be a really good thing to take care and really show that you're giving back to the county as well and helping those people during the time of real struggles in their lives when they've been through a major procedure as well. So just to recap, no upfront cost for Kershaw County. We are in network through our partnership and have negotiated rates with Blue Cross Blue Shield and other insurance providers. There's lower out-of-pocket costs for our patients, and as I've mentioned before, $400 to $600 on average. We feel very strongly about our advocacy program that simplifies the process for the patients after they're transported. The county keeps any unused funds that are budgeted towards the medical transport. There are caps on the out-of-network insurance claims and the uninsured costs as well at $700. And as I mentioned, no membership's required to be a part of this partnership. Any questions?
Thank you. Mr. Jones, we have a discussion period in new business. How do you want to go forward on this?
Well, I would like to ask a couple of questions, and I hope my colleagues will get involved and ask some questions as well. So you're telling me, for instance, let's take an example. The folks that called me that had a $26,000 bill, if we were doing this now, what would their bill probably have been?
Now it will be somewhere around that $400 to $600 range. Yeah, Jerry.
Sorry, a little better verse on the billing side. So with that $26,000, it would depend on how that went through their insurance company and what was left over. So with being in network, if those claims occurred now and those patients were in network with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, that flight, as long as it meets the medical necessity criteria, would be paid out at the contracted rate, leaving the patient only responsible with co-insurance, deductibles, or co-payments, which those vary from plan to plan.
That is an absolute far cry from what we've been doing or what has been happening.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
I just think that's remarkable. Um,
Other questions?
And I did want to point out one more thing about the membership program, that since we have that slide up, that $162,000 is based on the 65,000 citizens times $2.50 per citizen. That's what that comes out to. And it's important to remember about memberships. There are many companies out there selling memberships, citing that, hey, this will help you with your out-of-pocket costs. A very important thing to remember about the memberships is that the memberships only cover out-of-network costs and those who are uninsured. So when you look at 70% of the flight volume, if you are in network, you're only subject to your co-payment, your co-insurance, and your deductible. If you're on Medicaid, it's the same thing. You're still only subject to co-payments, co-insurance, and deductibles. And if you're on Medicaid, federal regulations dictate that you cannot balance bill a Medicaid patient. So if you pay $162,000 for a membership program, only 30% of your citizens are actually using it.
Thank you. To continue, since I still have the floor, Mr. Carpenter, Mr. DeBose, if the county was interested in this, where would we need to go from here?
Mr. Bose, please jump in. I would believe that if the council wanted the county to pursue finding out more information, that the appropriate step would be for county staff to reach out and seek proposals from them and anyone else who may also provide a service. And then receiving those proposals, staff would review it and then report back to council our conclusion on the basis of those proposals.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you'd have to do due diligence. I think you'd also need to make a policy decision that you wanted to delve into. This is totally a policy decision, but that the council wants to delve into uninsured medical costs as a matter of policy.
Well, Patrick, Jason, Jeremy, April, thank y'all so much for being here. I'm going to ask that our county administration looks into this further and gets back with us, because I am very interested in getting some information. If this is something that can save the taxpayers some money and not have to worry at probably one of the worst times of their life, I mean, it's just unbelievable. I appreciate what y'all brought before us tonight, and I think it's something for us to think about. But if you would, Mr. Carpenter.
Yes, sir.
Any questions from any of my colleagues?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Mr. Connell.
a couple questions. I was wondering how many other counties in South Carolina have adopted this as a best practice?
The community partnership program is a newer program that we're rolling out because a lot of counties in the past have always done the memberships. We've completely gone away from that avenue and really have done this because we've been enabled to do this because of our relationships with the private insurers now. But it's a new program.
And I know you've only been around for a month, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to dig in the weeds.
No, you're good.
I've
only been on this a few weeks, but I met with Barnwell County just last week as well. But it's something that we're going to be rolling out.
Okay,
to
well,
most
so
of the
that's
counties.
one. I'm just curious.
Sure.
So prior to the transition to this program, I guess the other one where people were using memberships
Yes.
didn't have enough participation for it to work that way. Maybe that's just an assumption on my part. I'm kind of wondering, why was there a transition to now where you're...
The transition is occurring mostly because we're able to do it with our private memberships and getting the insurers to pay what the patients were paying.
Yeah,
for.
it seems to me like on the Medicare side, legislative approach would be the best way, just to increase your reimbursement rates.
And there's active work going on with that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Aggressively.
I mean,
yeah.
this is another government entity that you're coming to seek funds for citizens, but these folks were initially citizens of the United States of America, as we're a creation of the state of South Carolina,
Sure.
which was then created by the federal government. So anyway, I do think we need to look into it more. It sounds interesting,
Sure.
but I'll have some questions to drill down on.
And we want to reinforce that this isn't, whatever you budget isn't money that you're automatically paying us. We're only going to send an invoice for any of the flights and the out-of-pocket costs that remain.
Okay, well, as I look at the numbers, so say you had 84, it's roughly about,
Sure.
I mean, the request is to subsidize about $400 or so
Yes, sir.
to 84 people within the county
Yes, sir.
that have found themselves, voluntarily or not, in a uninsured or situation where they can't pay this full bill, and you're asking that we pay their bill instead.
It's an avenue for the county to consider and an added benefit for the citizens if y'all chose to go that route. but it's also what I feel as an outsider coming into this new world. It's a much better. I think it's a much better arrangement for your citizens than what has occurred with other companies and even Air Methods in the past, where you're paying a lump sum money that would never be coming back to the county.
Well, in the past, just since you brought it up, based on what was described, I mean, it almost sounds like unfair debt collection practices. So I appreciate the change in the business process and how you actually help people navigate their insurance, which is a quagmire in itself, trying to understand what coverage you have or don't. You probably get better return on investment by, like you're saying, being friendly with folks and saying, this is what you're entitled to for coverage, and this is how you invoke a claim and make sure it gets paid.
Yeah, and I appreciate your response on that because I see it the same way.
Question.
Briefly, Mr. Snodgrass, sir.
Sure. So this is somewhat intriguing. In a former life, I was in hospital billing.
Why?
Well, I'm only 30. Yeah. Anyway, I'm old, man. 37. So, just walk me through just real quick, and I may have more questions that I probably just need to get with you on instead of taking up council time. But so, am I hearing this right? If we come into this agreement, so let's say a patient who's probably Medicare primary and Medicaid secondary, let's say they get life flighted to Prisma Richland. So obviously you have a base bill of what you pay, a negotiated rate with Medicare patients.
Yes, sir.
So you send that to Medicare B because we know Medicare A doesn't cover life flights. So you send that to Medicare B, and then whatever's left comes to us and or the patient. And yeah, whoever wants to answer this is totally fine. Yeah.
In that situation, Councilman, if the patient is on, which a lot
Get
of them
close to that mic.
Sorry,
So,
a patient who has Medicare primary, Medicaid secondary, and even any other patient, you'll see they may have Medicare primary, Blue Cross secondary, or Humana secondary. That claim goes through Medicare first. Whatever's left after Medicare pays goes on to the secondary provider. Right. So in this case, it would be sent to Medicaid. That patient would receive zero balance bill because federal regulations of Medicaid prevent balance billing. So that patient would have no balance bill due to
that situation. That didn't come to us then.
Not at all.
So only in a situation where it's just Medicare only, or a primary may be a private.
Private insurance. Medicare only, private in and out of network.
So do they have? So the patient receive anything, or does everything remaining come to us, or is there like a patient portion and we kind of help out?
So as he stated, so the cap on that would be $700. So that's all that's going to come back, and everything that's put into this account, essentially kind of like an escrow account that can roll from year to year. If $34,000 is budgeted for this account, but technically, let's say maybe there's actual $50,000 that was actually used from the number of flights that year, that remaining $16,000 does not come to you, does not go to the patient. You are capped off at 34.
Okay.
That's part of whatever, after the county council agrees and wants to move forward, that's all negotiated in.
Is there a difference in your charge if you fly someone to the Augusta burn unit versus Prisma Richland? Is there a difference in that?
There is.
Okay, so it's not just crank the helicopter up, it costs this, but it depends on.
Depends on,
where you going.
Travel, distance.
Seems logical.
There's a base fee for the type of aircraft plus mileage, and it's dependent on a state-by-state basis. So say, in this case, say an aircraft from the state of Georgia had to come into South Carolina and pick up somebody, they would be billed at the Georgia rate because that aircraft is located in Georgia. Gotcha. So it's different from state to state. For the most part, they're all pretty close together, but they do, in states that have higher income per capita, that number is a little bit higher versus a state that's got a lower income per capita, that number is going to be lower.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Mr. Gardner.
I have a question. For instance, we don't agree to do this. What happens to your company here? Do you continue to operate here? Do you move somewhere else? What happens to?
Yes, we do. The difference is that the responsibility would still fall on your citizens to cover the balance.
Okay.
I think Mr. Bozard had.
Yes, thank you. How many choppers you got out here now?
Each base has one aircraft. So we have the 3 bases in South Carolina. We also
You're still out at the airport, right?
Yes, right here we still have one
and
aircraft.
y'all took an airplane a chopper from here and take to Orangeburg because y'all didn't want to pay us money, right? about 5 or 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Is that right, Mr. Carpenter?
They did relocate one, yes, sir.
Yes.
Why?
That, Jason.
No, we had a spare aircraft that we keep at the hangar, and then plus a permanent aircraft that we keep at the airport. And we've always had, for the last 13 years, we've had the base in Columbia, Orangeburg, and Camden. I said, unfortunately, April 25th, we had to close down the Columbia base because it wasn't financially viable anymore. So we never took an aircraft from this county and moved to Orangeburg.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah. Mr. Tucker?
One of my questions was answered on the, that numbers go up to 160 versus the 84. Does the fees go up to 60-something thousand to double it? And I think I've got that answer. But I would make a recommendation to you guys, because I've heard this presentation about 2 years ago or so when y'all were at this, our conference down in Hilton Head.
Okay.
Y'all had a booth down
Yes,
there.
sir.
And I talked to whoever. I don't look like I remember seeing any of y'all down there, but
I probably took her place.
yeah, okay. So I say that to say this. I think a good avenue for you that I would recommend is to go through the Association of Counties and Municipalities and get with them, because if you can sell them and get them on your side, you probably can pick up all 46 counties and move forward. So that's just my recommendation for me.
Thank you very much. And we're already scheduled to be there as well, so I'll see you down there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Tucker used to be the president of that organization, so.
Nice.
Other comments? We looked at this in August of 2017. I was brought in on a $78,000 bill, and I'd be keen to hear what the staff comes back to with as to what's changed and what the business case is, recognizing what Mr. Carpenter and Mr. DeBose said is this has to be handled as a business competition. Other comments? Mr. Jones, you want to close it out?
If I could, April, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This is something that's close to me. I know you care about folks as well. All of us do. But bottom line, it's got to go through the process. I think Mr. Tucker was probably spot on. Contact the Association of Counties, try to get them on board. But I'm also going to ask Mr. Carpenter to have an open mind. I think some have not had an open mind in the last week. But have an open mind about this, and let's look at it and see just what we can do, if anything, to benefit the citizens of Kershaw County. And I want to thank the majority of my council members in here for allowing this to happen tonight, because there was a push to stop y'all from talking tonight, and I don't appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
One last point. I just want to ask you a question. Is Kershaw Health the best hospital you ever saw?
Of course.
Thank
Good
you very
answer,
much.
good answer.
Thank you very much. We took a liberal interpretation of 15 minutes, but I think it was well worth it, and I think we have a staff course of action from here. All right, well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Y'all probably would have got it tonight, but y'all didn't bring no dessert.
All right, well, thank you. We move on in our agenda now. The next item on our agenda is approval of minutes from 14 May. Those minutes are at tab B and also on the board. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion without yield.
So moved.
Mr. Gardner, a second?
Second.
A second from Mr. Snodgrass. Discussion on the minutes. Very good. We'll move to a vote. All those in favor, so signify. And it's unanimous. You can use either hand there, David.
Thank you, Miss Mary.
All right, now we get into some business. Ordinances follow. We have 5 ordinances. The first is a third reading of an ordinance of County Council, Kershaw County, to amend a zoning map and owning property owned by Randy Bach. Mr. Carpenter, can you bring us up to speed here?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you previously approved this rezoning of property, 21 acres of land approximately, from R15 to RD1. It is in front of council for third reading.
Very good. Can we have a motion to approve?
So move.
Mr. Jones, a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Connell. Any discussion? Seeing there is none, let's move to a vote. All those in favor of this approval on the third reading, so signify. And it's unanimous, and it passes and moves on to action for the staff. We now move into a series of 3 different ordinances impacting the budget. Item number 2 on the agenda is at tab D in your book, and it's the entire budget for the year 19 through 20. Mr. Carpenter, can you introduce it, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of council.
Go back to item 2. You're on item 2, right?
Item 2, correct.
Right. I think that's the fire fees, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Maybe I've got the wrong budget here. Yep, you moved it around on me. Yep, it does. I had an earlier version. Thank you, Mr. Tucker. I correct myself. This has to do with the fire fee, and it's at tab D. Mr. Carpenter, can you bring that in?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have in front of you for second reading tonight the implementation of a fee for the purpose of generating revenue to advance the county's fire plan.
Very good. It passed earlier on the first reading. Can we have a motion to approve it on the second reading?
So may.
Mr. Connell, thank you. A second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Gardner. Any discussion? Deferring first to Mr. Connell.
I would just have to echo what I said on first reading, essentially that we need to do better for our volunteer firefighters. We need to fund them a little bit better. We need to also transition to impart full-time fire service to cover the increased number of calls that are happening with a increasing population throughout the county. Nobody argues that the Camden Fire Service and Lugoff Fire District provide outstanding service with their full-time service in addressing the number of calls they handle. But our numbers are just, they're climbing. And we've been subsidized for a long, long time by volunteers. And it's increasingly challenging to get them certified because it takes over 200 hours to get someone new to be able to even stand on a fire scene and help out.
Before I go to another comment, I want to first say that it's been a 3-year process to get to this point with hard work by the staff and by Mr. Carpenter, but led by the task force, led by Mr. Connell and Mr. Gardner and Mr. Jones. Other comments, please.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Snodgrass, sir.
Mr. Carpenter, question for you. Is there, and before I say that, I want to stress the importance that we see for our fire service as we transition from volunteer to what I would call a career firefighter system. And I hope we all understand that firemen in this day and age are no longer, it's not about just putting fires out, but these are first responders. These are individuals who are tasked with far more than just putting the wet stuff on the hot stuff. But these are people who are triaging a situation. These are individuals who are first on the scene and responding. And as you saw on our heat maps last week, or the last meeting, that a lot of it has to do with maybe a motor vehicle response and other things. But that being said, I do, when I think about the fee, I do have questions about it, and I do have reservations to some degree. And Mr. Carpenter, is there any mechanism within our county structure that we could put some sort of rebate system in place so that when you look at a taxpayer that maybe does have 15 or 17 parcels of property, that there's a mechanism in place in which they're not taxed taxed as much. Is that anywhere possible?
Ms. Snodgrass, it's something that we've looked into. It's something that it's my desire. I have encouraged the county attorneys to see if they can help us find a way. But one of the issues we run afoul is the Constitution of the state requires that everybody be taxed equally. And if you start rebating taxes to some for the best reasons in the world, you still run afoul of those constitutional issues. Now, we've got some of the best attorneys around, so they're trying to find a legal way, certainly, that we can do it or come up with some workaround. And I'll defer to Mr. DeBose if they've discovered anything. But as of now, I'm not aware of anything that we can do.
And I thought that would be the case, but just for the sake of discussion, it might help.
We're trying.
We get it out there. All right.
Other discussion? Mr. Tucker, please, sir.
This kind of goes beyond, I probably could say for third reading, but in the future, we go to millage. This is you, Mr. Carpenter, and Mr. DeBose. You're going to miss some folks, your people that rent, your rental folks, but they have vehicles. Is there anything in the Constitution keeps us for still putting a fee on their vehicles versus, because they have no property to have a millage on, where they can have skin in the game as well with the property owners?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're not going to exempt renters, first of all, because the
Can you bring the
millage is
mic
on-
over, Vic?
Because the millage is on the car as well. So when, if a millage, the current fire millage at 9.6 mils, people who own cars are paying that right now.
Okay.
So the increase in millage will affect them also. A fee also affects renters because it's assessed on each apartment, it's assessed on each piece of property. The assumption is that landlords are very good at passing on costs. So I wouldn't expect that it will be paid, and I assume the landlord will take it up with the renters.
Well, I wasn't clear that it was on the vehicle, so that takes care of my question. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other comments? Mr. Jones, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the County Council. Just some clarification before I make some comments. This is second reading of an ordinance, Kershaw County Council, to be placed into effect, service and user fees for rates and charges for the furnishing of fire protection services within the fire protection district. So what we're asking to vote on tonight is the existing tax district for fire, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, so last week, we took a vote on fees and taxes for a new tax district, correct?
No, sir.
What-
That was the first reading of this ordinance.
But I'm saying this is not the same fire district we were voting on for the last meeting when Mr. Snodgrass and myself voted against.
Yeah, that's not on it didn't make it on the agenda.
I understand, but it's not on the agenda.
That was the creation of the new fire district effective July 1st, which is not on this.
It's not, so we're not reading that
Correct.
tonight, but now we're talking about a fee in the existing district.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not wrong. Okay. Danny, you've got my slides ready. Let me start off by saying I am voting against imposing large fees on property and cars for fire service. I have always been against it without an advisory referendum, as County Council stated in the Kershaw County Goals for fiscal year 2017-2018. If you'll look, it's right there. Kershaw County Council Goals fiscal year 17-18. Establish an ad hoc committee that is charged with engaging in a comprehensive study of county fire services and returning to the county council with recommendations for a possible advisory referendum for consideration and vote by citizens of Kershaw County, 2018. A fee is a tax in disguise, but is sometimes worse than a tax because, as Mr. Carpenter has said, fees are regressive, which means they hurt the people who cannot afford it. An advisory referendum is best. Just ask the question in 2020 election. We won't have to do a petition. We won't have to get 15% of the signatures on there if we do this. Say, are you willing to pay more taxes or new fees for better fire service in the fire protection district? And under the fire service fee ordinance, CASIT, could I have that other slide up there, please? Not that. Yeah, that. If you look at CASIT, it says 2023 CASIT. Okay. Under the fire service fee ordinance for CASIT, CASIT won't get much benefit at this point in time. New fees might not benefit the lake at all, or Liberty Hill or Westville. We're not sure. I am for better fire service, but I want the citizens to be informed and the citizens to vote as council promised in 2017, so the decision will be their choice to pay or not to pay more taxes and new fees for fire service or increased fire service. I'm saying let the citizens have a voice. Folks, it's been said up here that we got to do it. There's an emergency. We got to move now. There is no emergency in 2019 on something that has been around for many years, and the council stated in 2017 to have an advisory referendum on. The days of volunteers, I see we have some firemen out here now, the days of volunteers are gone. My time as a volunteer fireman or as a paid fireman, which I was, they're gone. You're not going to see the volunteers. Every county around is facing the same situation that we're facing. So there's no reason why we couldn't take time and wait and do what we said we were going to do, or what the intention was us to do. We don't need to rush to judgment. This is very complicated. As you have seen, we voted on an ordinance at the last meeting that we're not bringing up tonight because there was a possibility, the way it was written or the way it would be implemented, that some folks would be double paying. And nobody wants that, but bottom line is I've never seen a county government reduce fees or reduce taxes after they have implemented them, no matter how much good faith they say up here. And I've been here for 13 years, and I've seen these tax districts established before. As I said, this is very complicated. We don't need to rush it. Let me just tell you about council rushing to judgment, in my opinion, which is facts. We wasted well over $1 million for land on the lake at Liberty Hill that I voted against. We got raked over the coals by the bureaucrats and politicians for doing that, but I came out right on that. The land was very little value and or no use to the citizens. In 2015, 3.5 years ago, we issued a $17.2 million economic development bond. However, we have had very little, if any, success with economic development. I voted against the bond. That didn't work out so well for us as to now. I also voted against the $425,000 for the river parcel that's in the floodplain at the Watery River. As I said, I voted against that. Camden has a park, a river park, less than a mile away, and it's being funded through grants. Same thing. Would you go back to my other slide where it talks about volunteers? Yeah, I would like for my colleagues on council to tell me how we're going to achieve this. Every other county around is facing the same thing. Volunteers are almost a thing in the past. Yes, we do need to look at paid firemen. We do need to look at a full-service fire program. However, let's do what we said we were going to do. We said we're going to send it to the people on referendum. The fact that you need a petition with 15% of the signatures for what I just mentioned is not correct. And anyway, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council, thank you so much for allowing me this time.
Thank you. Other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Connell.
If I could address several things. First, Mr. Carpenter, how would the point system be impacted by this proposed fee for fire service?
The point system increases by roughly 30% the amount of money available. Points are awarded to the firemen, the volunteers, for the number of calls they receive. So essentially, the pool goes up by about 30% for available fire volunteers. So their available earnings goes up by about 30%.
So this proposal directly benefits volunteers through an increase in the point system, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right, this would have to be the slowest rush to judgment I've ever seen, because we've been looking at this for over 3 years. We've gotten new systems in place to actually let us look at accurate data, which we've had for 14 months now, I think, somewhere around that time. I think it's been very deliberate in the approach, and the volunteers are crucial. That's one point that I have to disagree on. I don't think volunteers are going to go away. We need them. We need their leadership. The system will not work because they know these areas. They know the fire stations. And this is not a capital proposal that is looking at building some type of grandiose fire stations. This is just talking about having the actual bodies in place that can respond to the existing calls we have based on the trends that we have, based on accurate data. I would also have to disagree that these are high fees, because the overall fee structure would be less than what you would pay per capita or per house, as I understand it, in Lugoff Fire District or Camden Fire District. I have a business in the Lugoff Fire District. Mr. Jones, I think you live there. I think that I get great service for what I pay. I'm pleased with my insurance ISO rating based on that service. And
I would just emphasize again that it was a possible advisory referendum that we were looking at. I would love to be able to send this to the people and have them vote on it. And at some point, I think they'll have an app that'll let us do that really, really quick. But I emphasize possible because we had to get a lot of education on the impact of Act 388, the impact on local municipalities, and how all of this would happen over 2+ years ago when we started looking at it formally as a council, and others were looking at it individually before that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gardner.
Yeah, most of our information that we got on the ADCOT committee that's come from us came from our firemen. Those are the people that know, and gave us the information. And certainly, a referendum, could be the answer, but that puts us 3 years away, early 2021 or 2022, before we can do anything. I think we're putting our firemen at risk now because of our shortages, and we're asking them to do the task that we're not adequately manned because volunteers are down, and we're putting them in bad positions because they're going to a fire with 2 people, and some of the standards that were brought to us that they need 4 or so many more there before they go into a burning building or what have you. There's standards that they have to go by, and I think the fee would allow us to an immediate impact on that. That's what that fee does, and then when we go to millage, the fee will go away. Could you go back to the other slide, Danny? And I disagree with Mr. Jones that Cassett doesn't get anything to 2023. We get a 12-hour shift starting in 2019. That's an improvement in itself right away. And we get that 12-hour shift, we move to 24 hours, and we add some people there. So I don't think Mr. Jones is correct in saying that they don't get anything for 4 more years. They do get something immediately when we place the fee. $25, a lot of money to some people, not so much. I guess it depends on whether your house is on fire or not. Thank you.
I think, Mr. Tucker, you're going to yield to Mr. Snodgrass, sir.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Just a couple questions. So comments, and Mr. Jones, you and I, we agreed definitely last meeting on the millage piece and the new district, and I felt like the dialogue that you and I led kind of helped us realize some things, and it's on the table, and we're going to study that. But I will say, as far as agree with Mr. Gardner, as far as Cassett, I mean, they do get a 12-hour shift, and if I'm not correct, Mr. Carpenter, don't they get a station at 2021 around?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so new station for Cassett Fire 2021, and possibly could relocate that, possibly could put it downtown Cassett, and create a sense of
downtown Cassett?
There is.
My father was born
There
in
is,
Cassett.
and you need to go to the Highway 1 Cafe and get breakfast there. They got a good buffet. So there's that. There's also things like this. This begins to generate revenue to where I know specifically our other stations may not be listed, but as we begin to get this revenue in, it frees up and it gives us more liberty to look at the Antioch station and to look at maybe the Westville station and to be able to dream quicker about how we do put a new roof on, how we do paint, and those types of things. So I'll be honest with you, it's something that has been I've prayed over the last just weeks because I understand what $25 means to people. I honestly do. And since I've been on council a short time, this is probably the toughest decision that I'm going to come to, and so I have considered that, but at the same time, I can't help but if we're going to move our county forward, I think it does have to do with moving towards career firefighting. As far as volunteer, I know last week ATEC graduated Explorers, and if correct me if I'm wrong, guys. These Explorers who graduated last week are certified to right now join a fire department. Are certified right now to be a volunteer and to step in and be on scene. So I would encourage our county fire department. I don't know I'm ignorant to what it looks like to start an Explorer program, but next year I'd love to see the Kershaw County Fire Service graduating Explorers there as well, and that could be the piece. That helps us trickle in those volunteers and hopefully our career firefighters that come up through the ATEC system.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out a few things. First, I want to say thank you to Councilman Jones Cornell and Councilman Gardner for sitting on this ad hoc committee. Thank you, Chairman, for assigning it. Can you go back? There. I would just like to point out in that slide that Councilman Jones read to you for the word recommendations for possible advisory referendum. Now, where I'm from, possible meaning it may happen or it may not happen. And I'm going to take the lead of our county administrator, staff, county attorney, and the majority of your ad hoc committee that wants to move forward recommendations over what you had just stated. But I want you to know that no one ever committed to doing a referendum. We talked about the possibility. And it's still not too late. It just happens to be some more criteria that comes along with that the 7 of us can't touch and county employees. So I keep saying that, reiterating that, because I want people to know the full story, not that we are just omitting what you would like to see happen.
Other comments? Mr. Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the council for those kind words. We're voting for a fee on a different ordinance tonight than we were last week. In 2 weeks, it's changed. There was a fee taken, a vote on an ordinance last week for a tax district, 2 weeks ago, that did not get Mr. Snodgrass's vote in mind. We're voting tonight. That's sort of been pushed aside. We're voting tonight on the existing tax district, the existing fire ordinance. And my question is, why were we even entertaining a new tax district, a new fire district?
Can I clarify that? That's for implementation in the next year. And we did a first reading on both of those. It doesn't mean they're pushed aside. They're still active. Mr. Carpenter, you want to talk to that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of council, the last meeting is when we went into great detail over the plan and the proposal to fund it. The aspect of the double taxation or of the double dipping was something that was a concern. But the proposal that was presented last week or last meeting, it included 2 things, one of which was the creation of a fee that would be effective July 1st, which is what is currently up for discussion right now with the existing fire district. The second one was the elimination of that district and the creation of a new district that would be effective July 1st, 2020. That is what was brought off the agenda as we do some more work on it with the intention of it coming back on with council's approval July or August later this summer. So it was not any fee because you can't go ahead and set a fee or a millage for the next fiscal year. That would be that council's responsibility to do that. But what it was doing was setting in place the language that would eliminate the current district and the $25 fee attached to it and going away and replacing it with a new district that would have a millage as the basis for funding the fire service. So it did not have, we did not remove from the agenda a fee that was being set, that we couldn't do that because it was effective July 2020.
Okay, I still have the floor. No, sir, I still have the floor.
Mr. Tucker,
I still have the floor.
Mr. Tucker, Mr. Jones still has the floor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate your support.
Appreciate you being so kind to me. Listen, my point stated. We're doing the fee tonight, first reading, so we can go ahead and get a fee process moving. There were a lot of complications with the new tax district that was first reading at the last meeting because of the possible double charging on some folks out in East Camden, you know, in that area, that fire district for the Camden Fire Department. And tonight, by doing this, we don't have that problem. But let me say this too. We keep talking about we're going to vote on this for the existing fire district, but in 2021 or whatever, we're going to look at the new tax fire district. I guess I was kind of concerned as to why we felt like we needed a new fire district or tax district, because the one we have now, it doesn't include Lugoff Fire District. It doesn't include the Camden Fire District in East Camden. It doesn't include Elgin. It does include Elgin, and it does include Bethune, which is what we couldn't do with the the new one at the last meeting. Is it true that under the current tax district that we're in now, that we have to maintain under Act 388 when it comes to millage?
Yes, sir.
That would be a yes.
Yes, sir.
And is it true that if we create a new tax district for fire, one-time setup, there is no cap with Act 388?
Not initially, there would be, but once it is in place, then it would be governed by Act 388.
Well, in other words, what he says, there isn't, because initially, and that's what we're talking about, that's where the 14 mills will come into place. So I'm just not comfortable. I don't think we know what we're really doing at this point in time. And that's my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tucker has the floor. Mr. Connell, go ahead, Mr. Tucker.
Mr. Jones had me about as confused as I can get. Let me clarify a couple things. We just voted on the minutes. This is second reading of this fee for the fire. It is not first. We just approved these minutes. First reading in title only, an ordinance for Kershaw County to place into effect service and user fees for rates and charges for furnishing fire protection service within the protection of the District of Kershaw County and authorized by ordinance to the Fire Protection District of Kershaw County. Motion made by Councilman Cornell, seconded by Councilman Gardner. All voted in favor except Councilman Jones. Councilman Snodgrass voted in favor for that. Where he voted with you against was for the tax district for millage, and it was 5-2. So I want to make sure that everybody's clear. This is second reading on the fees, not first. We didn't take this off the agenda and put it back on the agenda. There's no hokey pokey going on up here. We're going straight by what we said we were going to do, what we said in discussion, and this is where the chips lie. We deliberately not put the tax millage on because they're doing an investigation and seeing what we can do, what we can't do legally, and also the cooperation with the other municipalities. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Connell.
That just about covers it, Mr. Tucker. Thank you very much. I have some quick comments. So I think we know just what we're doing. It's a challenge, but it's deliberate after years of deliberation. The first vote, first reading on a new fire district was actually requested by our administrator so that in good faith, the municipality of the town of Elgin and the town of Bethune could see what this body had done, because we can't act individually. So whenever we showed that intent by voting in favor of it, the administrator was able to approach those municipalities and understand what a partnership would look like under a new fire district, because they're directly impacted by Act 388. He wanted to have that will manifested so that he could actually have those conversations a little more in depth. I understood they've happened and that we need time and they need time to figure out exactly how it will work. But, you know, we're all optimistic. And then secondly, I mentioned this fee is only an issue, I think, because the fire service mill has not been adjusted for an extended period of time, even to account for the cost of inflation. We haven't adjusted the fire mill, increased it at all to account for what volunteers needed, and we haven't adjusted it proactively to look at the increase in population. You can see where Lugol Fire District did that many, many years ago. The citizens said, you know what, we need this over here, and in order for them to actually do it, referendum was really the only mechanism they had to make it happen, so they did it that way. Here we have this mechanism, and I feel that the data justifies it.
Other comments? Mr. Bozart, please, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Carpenter, we talked about this last week. You were going to talk with Bethune and Elgin and see if they're going to go along with this, and we were going to swap money back and forth and so forth, right?
I've met and discussed a few things. First of all, I've encouraged them that they need to get their own legal advice to counsel and guide them to make the decision that's in their best interest. So say that up front, that I am not an attorney and I do not represent to them that what we're doing is in their best interest, though I think it is. It's not my opinion, it's their opinion that matters. The town of Elgin has requested a work session with me and their council in June, which I'm glad to do, to sit down and explain with them the plan in greater detail and answer as many questions as I can to start the process of working with them. So very open to that, and I think that's a good process to follow, and they requested it, and myself and staff will be there.
Okay, but my point was, we're gonna reach out to those two areas.
Yes, sir.
Include them. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Other comments? I'll make a few. I think I'm ready to call the question. There's no effort, and in fact, there's a full commitment to retain volunteer fire service. It is difficult, but that doesn't mean we won't do it, and everything in this proposal is riding on the bedrock of our volunteers, such as the young man we buried today. Volunteers are absolutely an essential part of this. Secondly, you get what you pay for. And as Mr. Connell has said, it's been over 2 decades since we have seriously addressed our volunteer fire system, and we have taken 3 years of study on this. And it is my judgment, a delay for a referendum will put on another 2.5 to 3 years before we begin to see any benefit, and that's presuming the referendum goes through. There will be no double taxes. We're doing this with careful deliberation, but as you know, there's several people on this panel that have had military experience, and I've had to bury people who aren't well trained, well manned, or well equipped. And when we put our firemen and firewomen into action, they deserve the very best we can get. And when I look at the level of pay that our very fine chief from Lugoff, who is here, provides $127 for every $100,000 on a home. When I look at the city of Camden, and they are taxing their people to the tune of some $190 per $100,000 home. And even with this proposal, we only rise to $92 per year. We have got to do something, and the gap is huge. Kershaw County can do better by its firemen. And by gosh, if I have anything to say, and I do have 1 vote out of 7, we'll do it. With that, I'm ready to call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. And it's Mr. Connell, Mr. Bozard, Mr. Burns, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Tucker, and Mr. Snodgrass. Those in opposition is Mr. Jones, and it passes on the second reading and moves forward. The next item is item number 3. Mr. Carpenter, can you introduce it, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have in front of you tonight for second reading the 2019-2020 budget for council consideration and approval.
Very good. Can we have a motion to approve?
So move.
Is that you, Mr. Snodgrass?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Thank Mr. Snodgrass. A second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Tucker. I go to Mr. Tucker for any amendments and discussion, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make an amendment to the budget. My motion would be to put Central Carolina Technical College on its own millage at a total of 2.33 mills, with 2.105 in operations and 1.225 in scholarships.
Give me the last number, please.
The last number was 0.225.
0.225 with a total millage of
2.233.
2.33.
2.33 millage increase. So we have a motion to provide a millage for CCTC at 2.105 and for 0.225. Can we have a second?
Second.
Second
from Mr. Gardner. Any discussion led by Mr. Tucker?
I just want to say that, Mr. Chairman and my colleagues, that this will stabilize our college where they can move forward and keep the megatronics and the engineering programs. And I've got some statistical data, if y'all want me to share it with you, where we're not even paying 10% of the operation and maintenance costs down there at this time. We've really got a big bang for our buck over the years, and that school, we have really invested into it, and we need to operate it now efficiently and effectively for our kids in the future.
Can you clarify the second millage you propose as a part of this at
Yes, sir.
.225?
Yes, sir. What that does is that scholarship money will grow as the millage grows, and it's separated out. So the Central Carolina Technical College will use it for scholarships and not incorporate it in operations and maintenance costs. We want that to go to the scholarships.
Mr. DeBose has a point.
I believe this is the budget, and the budget doesn't contain millage. The millage is in the millage ordinance.
Would you want to rephrase that, Mr.
Okay.
Tucker, to say
Mr. Tucker,
an equivalent?
Yeah, I think he needs to ask for an appropriation in the budget. It would be the sum, he would take the millage, the amount of a mill times what he wants to do, and he'd appropriate that amount. Then, assuming he wants a millage, when he gets to the millage ordinance, he would make a motion to add it to the millage ordinance, or add it in addition to, or take it from operations. I don't know how that's going to work, but it would go in the millage ordinance, not the budget.
I have no problem. Can I reinstate my motion, Mr.
Okay, well, let's have an amendment to the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment.
Here we go, guys.
All right, I'd like to make a motion for appropriations of $549,000 and $549,880 for the Central Carolina Technical College in our 2019-2020 budget.
And just for clarification, so before I get a second, does that include the $50,000 for the scholarship?
Yes, sir. That is included. That's the
Okay, and
operations and maintenance along with the scholarship monies.
Can we have a second to that amendment to the amendment?
Second.
So we have a second. Further discussion, please.
Yes, if I may.
Mr. Jones,
I have an amendment.
we want to do the discussion.
Am I correct?
Point of order.
I can do my amendment now as we've done it.
Well, they can discuss, and then you can make your amendment.
Yeah, I would certainly open up to you, Jim.
Thank you.
Point of order, can't the one who has made the amendment withdraw the amendment and restate it? Do we have to amend the amendment? Can't we?
We can do either way, and we'll go the way I just decided to go.
Either way.
Thank you. You're right. It would have been simpler, but here we go.
All right.
All right.
Miss Mary likes
Others? Other comments?
Mr.
Okay.
Tucker.
Well, Mr. Jones, go ahead, Mr. Connell.
I just had a quick question. So,
Yes, sir.
Could you break down the ops and scholarship proposed millage again? I understand.
Yes, sir.
I understand what the 549 was, but I want to.
Okay, so just take the 549, 50,000 of that is scholarship money.
Okay.
That would be the .225 if you were talking in millage.
And our current funding level is about $400,000.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's actually an increase. Last year we only gave 300, 303, something like that. Well,
3 plus 50 for the scholarship.
okay, so 350 total. Yeah, 303, 444 last year, plus the 50 scholarship.
Other discussion? Well, okay, let's go to Mr. Jones.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members of council, thank you so much. I'm going to make this easy for everybody and make everybody happy tonight. I move that we amend the amendment to reflect a total allocation to Central Carolina Technical College of $553,000 coming from the following existing revenue sources, none of which would require a tax increase. $303,000 from the Economic Development Fee in Lieu revenue stream, which is an increase from the current $253,000 that is already set aside for CCCTC, and $150,000 from the general fund, which is currently already allocated to Central Carolina, and then an additional $50,000 from the general fund that the administrator is tasked to find for the current balanced budget. I make this in the form of a motion.
And I just added it up, and you're $553,000. Do we have a second to Mr. Jones's amendment, to the amendment?
I'll second it. I want to hear what he has to say.
Okay, we have a second from Mr. Connell. Other discussion? You want to lead off, Jimmy?
I sure do. Thank you, Mr. Connell. Well, I basically said it in my motion. We currently have $253,000 already allocated from the fee in lieu economic development. I think it's been moved out of the economic development budget, but it's still allocated for Central Carolina. Then we have $150,000, am I correct, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Carpenter, that is already allocated in the general fund. Having said that, then I would ask the administrator to find a $50,000 more to put it together to present to the Central Carolina budget that they're requesting this year.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. It's pretty simple.
Thank you,
Excuse me. It's pretty simple. It makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bozar, have your hand up.
Thank you very much. I'm not in favor of Mr. Tucker's proposal or Mr. Timmy's proposal. I want to see what we're getting for our money. I want to know the Kershaw County, what they're receiving for it. I want to see how much it's doing to Kershaw County. I just don't believe we're getting our money's worth. I'm a graduate of Sumter Tech, which is now Central Carolina. I did advertisement for them after I graduated for over 2 years, so I'm not against Central Carolina. What I'm against is giving them more money, and we're not getting our money's worth. So they're a state college. I understand at one time they had one of the biggest foundations helping them get money there was in the state. And I understand that foundation is whittled down to near about nothing. But again, I'm going to say that I'm not going to support either one of these until we hear from the college and what they're doing, what they can do for Kershaw County.
Thank you, sir. Other comments? Mr. Tucker.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, you're getting the best bang for your buck. You just don't know it. Central Carolina's got it going on down there. Those kids are leaving, some of them 30-plus hours of credit going off to college so they don't be weighed down with debt when they get off to go to these other universities and places to try to get their education. I would also challenge you, Mr. Bozar, that if you have any questions, there is 3, and I'm going to introduce them right now, of our commissioners sitting right out here. One of them is the vice chair, Mr. Terry Hancock, Mr. Paul Napper, and I get to call him the junior commissioner, Mr. Thord Warren. Talk to these folks. They're appointed by our delegation. They represent this county. They do a fine job. They can get you any data that you want, and these kids are doing phenomenal things. And we need to push more with our guidance councils in the school so we can get more of our kids free of debt. And I'm a living parent of it. My son took many credit hours to Alabama to go to school, and he's a graduate now, got a fine job up in Charlotte working, and a productive citizen, married with 2 kids. So I know it works from a personal testimony. It works, and it has done a fine job.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I say one more thing?
Yeah, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Sid Isler, aren't you on the foundation? Well, anyway, I recognized you.
Well, I didn't know you were on the foundation board, and I didn't speak about the foundation board. I spoke about the commissioners.
That was all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Other comments?
Yeah, I got a couple
Yeah, please, sir.
This comment can go either for Mr. Jones' amendment or the amendment that Mr. Tucker has presented. Mr. Tucker's amendment obviously frees up some money to do other things with the FELO, whether it be through other avenues that we could talk about later. But as far as what Central Carolina is doing, I want to tell you a story. A young girl named Mackenzie Wall grew up in Camden, was in dual enrollment in CCTC since her sophomore year of school, and has just graduated with RN from CCTC and is now employed at Kershaw Health. This is what I know. Every vibrant community in this state, every vibrant county in this city in this state has a vibrant technical college system to go along with it. I'm partly a product of that. I did some dual enrollment myself in high school down at Orangeburg Calhoun Technical College. I believe that technical schools, trade schools in South Carolina are the backbone to our economic development machine here in this state. Governor Fritz Hollings, going all the way back in the 50s or 60s, was instrumental in starting the technical college system in South Carolina. And there have been welders, there have been electricians, there have been heavy machine operators, there have been RNs, there have been rad techs that have been trained in our technical college systems, and kids have been able to stay in their community and become profitable, contributing tax-paying systems. And so, again, you can take these remarks to support both amendments, really, because I'm convinced that this is important because every vital and vibrant community in South Carolina has a vital technical college to go along with it.
Mr. Bozard.
Yes, thank you. I agree with you, Mr. Snodgrass. The schools is important. I taught at York Tech. Not only did I go to Central Tech, but I taught at York Tech for 12 years. I graduated a lot of students up there. So I'm not against that. But at the same time, though, in York Tech, we did not get a whole bunch of money from the counties like what they're giving, Kershaw County's wanting to give now to these colleges. We did a lot more on our own, and that's just basically the way it is.
Mr. Gardner had his hand up, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, you know, times change, and I think that what we're getting, if that Central Carolina is not moving forward, I don't think we would see the enrollment doing what it's done in the last 4 or 5 years, nearly doubling. So I think that in itself speaks for what we have here. So I think they're very important to our community, our county, and like Mr. Snodgrass says, that we're producing citizens that stay in our community, that work here, they contribute. Some of them will be elected to this board at some time down in the future, and I think it's very important that we support it as we should, and we've been lagging behind on that, so I support.
Mr. Tucker.
I'm done.
Okay. Well, I think Mr. Gardner said it best. Times have changed. You can't take what you did in the 70s and 80s and apply it to 2019. Listen to these figures. Darlington County, 69,000 population, 2.5 million the county gets. Georgetown County, 68,000 population, 465,000. Greenwood County, 73,000 population, 1.4 million. Cherokee, $60,000, $585,000 from the county. These are figures from the county. So you're trying to tell me Kershaw County is not better than these 4, 5, 6 counties? Kershaw County, we gave $2,250 in 2017. So not counting the scholarship money. So are we not better than this?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Connell, sir.
A few comments. I was able to see some of the return on investment from Central Carolina just recently at Lugoff Elgin High School. They had their awards day, and at the end, they were calling up the Central Carolina graduates or participants, I guess, who had, I mean, I was astounded by the number that stood up with a minimum of 12 credit hours going into college, and I think one had like 34.
Right. 34.
I don't know how you do that.
34 hours.
But,
no summer.
Yeah, and my brother Will actually finished up a number of years ago with about 28 credit hours. It's just amazing what you're able to accomplish here locally and the kind of workforce you can help develop. So that was the first point. I think there's good return on investment there. I really appreciated Mr. Snodgrass's comments because both of these motions, and I think Mr. Jones is still pending on the floor at the moment, suggest significant funding to the local community college. Mr. Jones actually was asking for about $4,000 more from various sources. But with that said, and I could agree, you know, that both of them should probably be supported. I think, though, for continuity's sake, that millage is probably a better business model for a funding mechanism because Central Carolina is home-based or has traditionally been home-based in Sumter. And we're trying to set up home base number 2 up here and really have them commit to new programs that the market wants that will make the graduates locally more attractive, more marketable, and hopefully attract industry. So for that reason, I think I'd support the millage increase, which actually is $4,000 less than Mr. Jones' proposal. And just for continuity's sake, it shows a commitment so that they will introduce programs that and invest resources here in a continued way. Thank you.
Other comments?
I will say,
yeah, Mr. Snodgrass.
Mr. Bozard, it seems I did pull the record, and you're right. At one time, York probably didn't. Looks like you missed the boat. I pulled the record. They do now have millage for York Technical College, and you probably should call them and say, hey, you know, where's your fair share? But just my point being, yeah, I mean things move, time changes, And it's not unprecedented for counties to establish that kind of millage. Mr. Carpenter, 2.3 mills, what does that look like for because we talk about millage, most folks may not fully understand what that amounts to, but let's say a $100,000 home, what does that account to?
It's a little over $9.
So $9 a year on a $100,000 home.
Roughly, yes.
And that multiplies into over $560,000 to take our college to the next level. Thanks for your.
Okay, other comments? Mr. Jones,
If
sir.
I may, yes. We support Central Carolina. We just support different funding mechanisms up here. Well, most of us do. Mr. Carpenter, a mill is worth about what, 230?
About 226,000.
So the millage tonight would generate how much to 2.3 mills?
I can go ahead and do the math for you, sir.
I appreciate it.
I think it was 549.
549.
Yeah, that 2.33 will.
About 526, 580, or
About 526 to $580,000, correct?
yeah, unless I typed it wrong.
My motion tonight, how much did that generate?
500 and I don't have it in front of me.
$53.
553.
Okay, I guess I'm wondering where's the $4,000 more in my motion versus the millage?
I wrote down 549, 880,
That's what it was. Mhm.
and then your motion was
Yeah,
553.
Mr. Carpenter is using, I think, 230 or 220. That's off 236.
Okay,
Oh, 230, okay.
Right.
all right.
And that's what you gave us that budget.
Anyway, thank you, Mr. Tucker, for your commitment and support to Central Carolina Technical College. And Mr. Connell, all the rest of you, I have the same feeling. And I tell you guys, to see you here tonight, the commissioners, the foundation members, I think it speaks a lot about what Dr. Michael Makota and others are doing at Central Carolina Technical College, because it absolutely does change lives. I've seen that firsthand. You're going to get your money. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other comments? Let's see. I think I should say something with the chamber here. Trained and ready workforce. We've heard that from those who support our great technical college. From the foundation, from Mr. Isler and the team, Mr. Makota has approached me on how we can help you on this partnership that you do, and so I'd love to chat with you about that. And for the board, Thoyd, Terry, and Paul, let's keep telling a good story here, okay? Now, are there any other amendments to the amendment to the amendment? No other amendments to the budget? All right, we'll begin to vote, and we'll take them in reverse order, starting with that from Mr. Jones. I'll restate it. Jimmy, help me out here. We take $553, $3,000, $553,000.
Do you want me to restate it?
Yeah, please restate, and then we'll vote.
Okay. I move to amend the amendment to reflect a total allocation from CCCTC of $553,000 coming from the following existing revenue sources, none of which would require a tax increase. $303,000 from economic development, fee in lieu revenue stream, which is an increase from the current $253,000 revenue stream that is already allocated. $150,000 from the general fund, which is currently allocated to Central Carolina Technical College. And then an additional $50,000 from the general fund that the administrator is tasked to find from the current balanced budget. Thank you, members of council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have a first and second. I'm now ready to call for the question. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Mr. Bozard and Mr. Jones, and all those opposed, Mr. Snodgrass, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Burns, and Mr. Connell, and the motion to amend fails. We move to the next one as introduced by Mr. Tucker, which is an appropriation by millage. Mr. Tucker, do you care to restate, please?
Yes, sir. Once again, I'd like to appropriate $549,880 into our budget for the operation of Central Carolina Technical College and $50,000 for the scholarships. So that would be a total of $549,880.
Very good. All those in favor of Mr. Tucker's motion signify by raising your hand. Mr. Snodgrass, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Burns, Mr. Jones, and Mr. Connell. And those opposed, Mr. Bozard. And the motion to amend the amendment passes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can I state one thing?
Yes.
First, I'd like to just say thank you to my colleagues, including Mr. Jones over there, because I know his love for Central Carolina, so I want to thank all of you. But I want to say this is something Ben hit on it earlier, we don't have to address next year. Due to any type of catastrophic failure or just tremendous growth, this should move right along with our county. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Bozard.
I will make it unanimous.
I'm sorry?
I will make it unanimous.
Unanimous.
Oh.
So I think we go back and vote again. All right, we have now Mr. Tucker's motion. We'll now revote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And Mary, it's unanimous. And
Thank
so
you.
the amendment passes unanimously. And now we have to vote on the budget as amended.
Go Titans.
Sorry? If I had followed Mr. Snodgrass's good advice, but I'm having too much fun.
I tried to help you, sir.
It's a serious vote. We now have the budget as amended, and all those in favor signify by raising your hand. And the budget passes on the second reading unanimously. We move to the next item. Mr. Carpenter, help me out. I'm wearing out.
Mr. Burns, there were more motions. It wasn't dealing with Central Carolina, but there was more motions.
It was.
Yes, there's some more motions that we have that amendments for the budget appropriations.
Correct.
Well, that
Yes.
amendment then carries forward, and I think that's what we just voted on.
We only voted on Central Carolina, what to
Correct.
do with Central Carolina.
When I asked for the third vote, I asked for the budget as amended. So if you'd like to do it again, let's do it again. All those in favor?
No, I don't want to vote on the budget being closed again. I wanted to make the amendments that we were supposed to make, and we didn't get a chance to do any other than Central Carolina.
I asked for any that you had.
Well, I wasn't
Would
clear.
you like to do another amendment?
Yes,
We
sir.
were so excited about the Titans.
Right.
Central Carolina Titans.
So excited about the Titans, right, Terry? Go Titans. Yeah, I asked when I asked you, that's what I asked for. But please, let's open it up.
Yes,
and
sir,
you have an
please.
amendment.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make an amendment to the 2019-2020 budget to reestablish the county council accounts at $49,000, and like to make a motion to budget $94,000 for the COG building, the new COG building that's coming up at Santee Lynch's Region Council of Governments.
Is that one amendment, Sammy, or
You want me to split it?
can you split that?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, okay, let's go again.
Okay. Motion to reestablish the county council accounts that we've had a couple of years ago at $49,000, which would be $7,000 per council member. A lot of good came out of that.
Okay. Can we have a second to that?
Second.
Just to be clear, I'll restate it. Some years ago, there was an account where there was $7,000 for each council member to appropriate, to direct be spent, and that didn't have to be in his own district. And that 7 times 7 is 49,000.
That's correct, Mr.
All right. A second.
You got it, Bozard.
Mr. Bozard gave us a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Tucker, if I might add, I believe there were some rules.
They're enacted as well.
Them rules are enacted
Yes,
as well.
sir. That's why I said reestablish. So that means that the rules are reestablished along with the appropriations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if I could just clarify what those rules essentially are, was that council members could not appropriate the funds. I think that was the term used. Council members could recommend to council allocation of funds, but the county council as a whole would have to vote on allocating those.
Required the vote of the council.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator, Mr. Council.
All right. A second. It was from Mr. Bozard. Discussion. I think we've had the discussion.
Well, I would just ask where do you see this money coming from in the budget?
It's going to be in the county council's account. You'll have a line item there.
Right. But so it's
part of what you just voted on for the millage.
Okay. All right.
Yes,
so
that's what
that opens up. Just so we all understand.
Yes, sir.
With the increase in millage,
Right.
that opens up
Of opportunities.
other opportunities. And so, for example, let's say, so if there's a project within the council members' district that's imperative, so we could bring it to each other and allocate those as needed. Okay.
What we find a lot, Mr. Snodgrass, is these voting precincts we use, even though we don't use them every year, they don't have a source of revenue that's steady. So a lot of times they would come to the local representative of that area and ask for assistance. And we've done the healing of the wall. We've done projects in Elgin. We did a lot of good. And I was real proud of this council on how responsible and what good they did by spending this money. And it wasn't just spent in one district. We helped other districts out when projects were brought to us. And we didn't spend it all. That's exactly right. We did not spend it all. Nothing says you have to spend a dime.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. Connell.
Question for Mr. Carpenter. Is that, using those funds just requires one vote, council approval?
Correct. Because the money will already been allocated in the budget.
Right.
So the money's in the budget, it's just directing where it goes.
Other comments? I will repeat what I said 3 years ago. As a matter of principle, I don't believe this is appropriate. We've just spent 6 months doing a budget, and there's enough reserve and certainly competence on behalf of our administrator. If there was a contingency that would require an untoward expenditure and a vote in this council, we could find $49,000 or $7,000. And I believe that this is a bad practice that gives the council members the authority to do things that give them a more authority over budget than they should have, and it leads to bad practices. And I won't go any further on that because I'm really quite strong on that matter.
Could I say something, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, and I see any other comments, yes.
Yeah, I disagree with you on that. First off, if someone on council wants to spend that money, they got to bring it before county council, and it's vetted before county council. It has to have a majority of county council to approve that money to be delivered, allocated on that, thank you for the big word, on that proposal or whatever. But anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah, and we've had that discussion before, and I still have strong feelings about it, that I believe it's a bad practice for this county. But other comments? Yeah, Mr. Connell.
I appreciate Mr. Burns' position because it establishes or emphasizes accountability you want to have over taxpayer dollars. But I also appreciate the responsiveness that is allowed by these accounts. I'm trying to think, it was only there for 1 year, or I got to experience it for 1 year, and I think we put maybe $3,000 of that towards a F-250 truck at the Blaney Fire Station for a tool tray. Yep. So, Mr. Carpenter, if you could help me understand, and maybe this gets into your discretion of spending under $25,000, what would have been the other mechanism to fund that if it needed to get done quickly and they had some type of need?
I would have to identify a source of the funds. So this would be a source of funds to pull from. Without, absent that, if council wanted to spend $3,000 on, then I would find the funds somewhere in the budget.
So I'm just curious, if responsiveness is the issue, under the second hypothetical, say we don't have this account and they need to get something at Blaney Fire or wherever else, that is a very significant need. Would we have to have multiple readings, or would you use your discretion to spend?
If it's within $25,000, then I have the ability to authorize the expenditure of funds. I would just have to identify where it was come from and make the necessary transfer from that account.
So you could do a line item transfer from the general fund or something like that?
I could do a line item transfer. It would just have to come from somebody's budget. I would not have a budget to pull from, so it would.
You couldn't pull it from the general fund unless we amended the budget to provide.
Correct. It would have to come from an already allocated amount of funds within the county's budget.
Mr. Chip.
Yeah, Mr. Tucker, go right ahead.
I understand your thought process over there, Councilman Connell. Here's the problem. Let's say there's X amount of dollars in the budget. You have a project. You go first to Vic. I go second. Your project eats up whatever leeway you may have. I get left out. My constituents get left out. Here, you've got a set amount budgeted. You know what you can do, what you can't do, and it's not a fight over the administrator to make a decision on who he's going to fund and what he's going to fund and make him have to make those decisions, because I don't think that's fair to him.
Mr. Carpenter, please.
And if I could be clear, I would not do that, Mr. Tucker. I would not just, Mr. Tucker comes to me and wants me to spend $5,000. and do that. It would be a case of I would identify the funds and then come to council and let council know, or the council member would come to council and let them know. But I would not, behind a closed door, find the money and spend it.
Sure, and that's not what I'm suggesting. Sorry, I know you have the floor.
Question. So,
Mr. Snodgrass, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I would be new to this, if this would pass. So I'm assuming there's some sort of check and balances procedures on what is appropriate to use this, because I've heard some really interesting stories from smaller counties that have this, and the councilman, they sit around thinking, hey, I'll give you $500 from my account for the barbecue, and I'll give you this for the ball team, and all this type of thing. And so this is not
an LA Moss area organization.
Sir?
It would have to be an LA Moss area organization, and Mr. DeBose can define that far
Gotcha.
better than I can.
I mean, I don't want to turn into a situation where we're just going around the table, just I would imagine there's rules on what is appropriate to, capital projects, those types of things.
Mr. Burns?
Well, I would not be the one to say that this council is like those other councils in
Right.
which one council member says, you vote for mine and I'll vote for yours. I would say Mr. Jones would not say that to Mr. Tucker. But there is a tendency for that, and I'm sure no one is that unethical. But there is a tendency when you swap that sort of influence, and I'm steadfastly against this on those ethical grounds. Over. To you, Mr. Tucker.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just want to say, Mr. DeBose, can you relocate those policies that we have for the distribution of these funds and share back with council, please?
I can, but as Mr. Carpenter said, the overriding parameters are that council is appropriated, the money is appropriated, it's $7,000 per council member. You can combine them, so you can get 7. Mr. Snodgrass can give you 2 of his. It provides that council does have to vote in open session as an agenda item.
Right.
Agenda item has to specify what it is. And the overall consideration is it has to be a public purpose. Not a private purpose, but a public purpose.
Well, all right. And you'll have other amendments. Shall we go ahead and vote on this one,
Yes, sir.
Sammy?
Yes, sir.
All right, I think we're ready to call the question. All those in favor of this $49,000 with the previous rules to
How
be
much?
total of $49,000,
Yes.
7 for each council member.
20.
Signify by raising your hands. All those in favor. Mr. Bozard, Mr. Gardner, and Mr. Tucker. All those opposed signify by raising your hand. Mr. Jones, Mr. Connell, Mr. Burns, and Mr. Snodgrass. And the amendment fails. Let's go to the next one.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Snodgrass, you're going to lead?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, please.
I was just looking at the budget. We have outside agencies in which we contribute to. These are nonprofit agencies which I would argue, take a minimal investment of our funds and do a lot of good with it and multiply it far beyond what we could do. And Mr. Carpenter did a great job putting that outside agency.
I need you to make the motion, please.
Sure.
And then we'll discuss it, okay?
Absolutely. I'll make a motion that we increase the United Way contribution to $10,000.
And do you have a source for that?
Yes, the source is the mills that we have just voted on.
Okay, and within that context?
Within that, because that frees up.
All right.
That frees up general fund money.
Okay, we have a motion to apportion $10,000 more to the current 5 to the United Way within the construct of Mr. Tucker's original motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Tucker. Any discussion? Now, you would, please.
Yeah, I just continue. It's not about we've already got beyond the millage. So everyone understands, there is more ability, more opportunity within our existing budget to do some really neat things. And outside agencies is one way that you can take a little bit of investment, and it goes far beyond what we could do on our own as far as creating perhaps safety nets, if you will, for our community by investing in the private sector or the private nonprofit sector. And I believe the United Way has proven their ability to do that in our community. I realize there is a stigmatism with United Way National But it's been in my experience that the United Way of Kershaw County is total opposite of what maybe your impression of the national organization is. The United Way of Kershaw County does a phenomenal job of investing very wisely and investing in things that are of value and that are consistent with our Christian values here in Kershaw County. And that's why I support this.
Thank you, sir. Other comments? I'll say this is the 65th year of the United Way in Kershaw County. Mr. Savage and my father were the first two leaders of that organization. I'm very proud to say that. And it continues to do great work this year and into the future. Rose Shaheen is heading up a celebration of that, and if you can give support to Ms. Rose on that, I would appreciate it. Other comments?
I will be abstaining on this.
And Mr. Gardner will abstain. I think we can move to a vote on this amendment. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Mr. Snodgrass, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Burns. All those opposed signify by raising your hand. Mr. Jones, Mr. Connell, and Mr. Bozard. And abstaining would be Mr. Gardner. The motion fails. Next amendment, please.
That's all.
That's it? Okay, we have one additional amendment to carry forward. No, we have none. And we have previously voted on the amendment that Mr. Tucker introduced for $549,880 to amend the budget in behalf of the CCTC. So now we'll return, if Mr. DuBose doesn't shoot me, to voting on that amendment to the budget now fully, the amendment to the budget and the budget as amended. Can we have a motion to vote on the budget as amended?
Quick question.
Yes.
Do we do the motion as amended on the budget, then we vote on the budget? Or you can do it at one time?
No, we've made the amendment to the budget, now be the budget as amended.
I got you, okay, very good.
Amendments are passed, as amended.
Just need that clear.
Good question, Jimmy. And if I had done what Dave Snodgrass had said, we'd been done by now. Thank you, David. So as I stated, can we have a motion to vote on the budget as amended?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. A second?
Second.
Second for Mr. Connell. All those in, any discussion? No further discussion. Good work, gentlemen. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it passes. Nope. We have Mr. Snodgrass, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Burns, Mr. Connell, and Mr. Bozard in favor. Those opposed would be Mr. Jones. And let's move forward with the next item. Help us out here, Mr. Tucker. You're wearing your chairman out.
Yes, sir, I know I am.
No, Mr. Cartwright, Mr. Carpenter, excuse me.
Cartwright.
I understand confusing me with Mr.
Sorry.
Tucker.
That's my business.
We have tonight, Mr. Chairman, for second reading, a setting of the millage ordinance for Kershaw County for fiscal year 19 and 20.
Very good. And I will say in advance, we'll need a little help from you, Mr. Carpenter, and Mr. DuBose on how this might be fixed against our previous vote. So do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve our millage ordinance.
Okay. We have a first from Mr. Tucker, a second.
Second.
Second from Mr. Snodgrass. Discussion or further amendments?
I have an amendment, Mr.
Yeah, Mr. Tucker, go ahead.
This is where I make my amendment for the 2.33 mills. So I'd like to make a motion to increase our millage by 0.233 mills. And I think I've already spoke about that in the budget cycle of the appropriations, how it's going to be spent. So that's my motion.
Can we have a second? I know there'll be discussion there. Can we have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, you, Ben?
I just heard the motion say .233.
No, 2.33.
2.33.
Yeah, 2.33.
2.33 mil.
Yeah, it's getting late. Sorry about that, Ben.
Do we have a second? Is that you, Ben? David Snodgrass seconded. Mr. Tucker, tell us how we might fix that language up on the screen and any discussion you might have with that.
Where it goes there for 2019, 6.58 mils, you would add 2.33.
Is that right,
That's
gentlemen?
it.
Yes, sir, it would just be,
Yep, it doesn't affect the rest of that. The top line, right there, operation and personnel budget.
let me ask a question, and Sandra, listen up, please. Would that have a CCTC line to it, Sammy, or others, or not?
And I think Mr. Tucker's correct. He just wants to add 2.33 because it's in the budget.
Yes, but I don't mind it being labeled out on the tax notice like EMS. That's not a problem. I prefer that so they can know what they're paying for.
Yeah.
Be very transparent. Yes, sir.
Mr. Snodgrass.
I was under the impression that I was voting for, basically you would add a G, you would add another line to that, and CCTC would have its own dedicated millage.
We can do that.
Can you dedicate millage?
Well, the question is, can you dedicate millage?
Okay.
The answer is, it's every year you would have to do it. So it comes from county operating. It's in the budget. It's part of county operating. Of course, emergency medical services is in the budget too. County capital's in the budget too. So it'd be part of county operating.
Okay.
So every year you'd have to vote on it. So it's only dedicated to the extent that the rest of that's dedicated, which means every year you have to vote on it.
But tax notices could reflect it as that does with the G for Central Carolina Technical College.
It'll go on the tax notice bill, but it's going to go to the county operation and personal budget.
Yes.
I got
But
you.
it's under county operation.
I'm tracking.
All right.
You tracking?
You tracking? Other discussion here. My view on this was to try to get transparency so that people know what they're paying for and the CCTC knows what they're getting. Would there be any need to adjust the fees on this chart because of the fire?
Already done that.
And we've already done that. It would not be on this,
Correct.
but it
This
would
is
be
millage.
a fee reflected in the massive budget document that we have here.
Correct.
Does everybody get that? All right, any further discussion? All right, with that, I call the question. We're ready to go. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Mr. Snodgrass, Tucker, Mr. Gardner, Mr. Burns, Mr. Bozard, and Mr. Connell. And those opposed would be Mr. Jones, and it passes 6-1. With that, we move to the next item. Mr. Carpenter, help us through.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have before you tonight for second reading an ordinance that would amend the existing public utilities, the county code or our sewer ordinance. Essentially, this is just bringing us into compliance with mandated and required changes from the EPA and DHEC.
And for your information, it's up on the board. It's just a short paragraph if you want to scan it, gentlemen. Can we have a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. We have a second. Is that you, David?
Second.
A second from Mr. Snodgrass. Discussion. Vic, just very quickly run it over, please.
Again, the county is required to bring our use ordinance in compliance with existing mandates from EPA, and so this changes wording in it. It doesn't add anything new significantly to it. It just brings us in compliance mostly with some of the minimums required, as you see under the BOD, COD, et cetera. Those are the basic minimum parts per million, parts per what have you that are required to be in the ordinance.
Was this the inspection and visit that Russ Van Patten hosted?
I mean, it wasn't because of this, but I mean,
Yeah.
this is something which we had to do.
Yeah, you didn't
And
buy
Russ
him
is here
enough
if you have any
hamburgers,
specific
Russ.
questions.
But can you explain what streamlining rule is? Russ?
Has certain items that you can choose to include. Some of them are required. Some of them you can choose not to put in there. So we've put in the minimum that's required so that our ordinance meets the requirements.
Okay. Any other questions for Russ? Good job, Mr. Van Patten. Thank you, sir. Ready to go to a vote? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And Mary, it passes unanimously. We go to new business. The first is a census update that requires no vote.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, just a brief update. The county is in the process of putting together a complete count committee. The complete count committee is suggested by the federal census, which is a department of the Bureau of the Interior, and we are in the process of putting that together. We're also working with that committee and also the census itself to check county records against their records, such as 911 records and subdivisions, to make sure that everybody in the county is recorded correctly so they can have the opportunity to participate. It is strongly in the county's interest that every citizen of this county, every resident of this county be counted, as this is what determines our local government fund allocations. This is what determines our road funding allocations. This pretty much determines about every source of revenue outside of our own taxes and millage that we receive.
And if I can lead the discussion, I will tell you I've been in touch as a, quote, senior elected official. I think I'm the oldest. No. Al, you got me beat. As a senior elected official.
Don't you forget it either.
Yeah, don't you forget it. I routinely get a letter from Atlanta or from the national headquarters telling me what's going on. I go to see Mr. Carpenter, and he says he's already done it. So your staff has done a great job. The second point here, and everybody should capture this idea, is that the county is doing it on behalf of the municipalities. And the Elgin and Bethune, Camden, all are relegated, secondary to Vic and his team, and they're doing a great job. But the next phase of this thing is, it has to be understood that this is a digital census. Back when it was last done, I think they used stone tablets. And so if we don't get it right and we get missed, we lose huge segments of our influence and our ability to garner money for our county. So the idea is to form, what do you call it, a whole count, a full count committee.
Full count.
Yeah, Mr. Tucker has, Mr. Tucker has experience with the full count, as does Mr. Jones. The rest of us do not. And so as chairman, I've asked Mr. Tucker to take up forming a full count committee. It is not an ad hoc committee. It's not appointed, but it's voluntary of nature, but it really requires the 3 municipalities, the school district, and many, many other organizations. So we get a full count. And when a person in some remote house gets a letter, that person needs to know that's important to respond to that, because it helps our fire departments, our EMS, our schools, and all of us if we get a full count. So I'd ask that Mr. Tucker allow the staff to lead, but sir, if you would leverage them, and we'll move forward on this thing. That's all I have to say on that, but I would ask you to give it your full attention. It makes a difference. Any comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Tucker.
Just one briefly. I have had the opportunity to meet with Ms. Peeler, who is the regional coordinator for South Carolina. I think her office is in Gaffney. She's upstate.
That's correct.
Yeah, she is getting a lot of her assistant folks. This is a time that we really, as the chairman has stated, need to count. And we're going to need the churches and local organizations involved, because people are not going to fill this stuff out electronically or by paper ballot if they're uncomfortable. And you know the rhetoric that's going around now. So we want to make sure that everybody's counted. We don't care whether they're a citizen, an alien, whatever. We need to count every breathing body. And that way we may pick up another congressional seat. As the chairman stated, it's definitely on the funding part where it's going to determine what type of federal dollars we're going to get into this state. And I'm tired of the money's coming south but skipping South Carolina. So we're going to need your help, and I encourage you, if you want to volunteer, see staff, myself, and we're going to get going. And that's called a complete count, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thank you. Let's get it done. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the returning to the Air Methods Community Partnership. Mr. Jones, you want to introduce that again?
I do not.
Very good. I think we can dispense with that. Mr. Jones, I think it was very valuable, and we spent almost an hour on that topic, and I think it's important to our people that we get good staff support. With that, we go to council briefings, and Mr. Connell, you have the honors.
I would just say happy birthday to Mr. Snodgrass. I had most of my hair before I started council. So
Not true.
I had a lot of it. I hope that your genes are stronger than mine. I have no additional briefing, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of things right quickly. Happy birthday, Mrs. Snodgrass. And Tom Gardner, it's great seeing you doing so much better.
Thank you.
As I said, you've been in our prayers. And Ben Connell told me the other day that he really enjoyed sitting by me these last couple of years, and he plans to do it 4 more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Snodgrass.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, just very brief tonight. I just want to, we did some hard work tonight
as
a council, and thank everybody for being a part of that. And just, again, I said it during some remarks previously, I don't take any vote lightly. This was going into this meeting was one of the toughest meetings so far. But I believe that we are a community, and I believe that we take care of one another. And I believe that even though some decisions may be tough for some, at the end of the day, I think we do what is best for the greater good of moving our county forward, and that it is a place where people want to live, work, and play, and to encourage that type of growth. So. Also want to remind people that I'm currently accepting nominations for our District 5 Award, Pride Award. So if any business owners, properties that you are seeing being invested in, whether it be down the Highway 1 North Corridor, which is East Camden, or other parts of District 5, please let me know. I want to recognize them as we want to encourage private investment taking place in our county. And thank you, council members, for your birthday wishes. Man, there's no place I'd rather be on my birthday than
easy now.
here.
You a preacher. Easy.
I'm a preacher, but
your nose is growing.
Yeah. Those of you who know me, you know that I'm actually, I really enjoy being up here. So but yeah, thank y'all.
Tom.
How about Sammy?
He just skipped over me. I guess you covered me
Mr. Tucker, go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
I couldn't even see you. Stand up.
Yes. Once again, happy birthday, Councilman Snodgrass. I want to say that I had the opportunity to bump into Councilman Snodgrass this weekend, over the long weekend, and he has a very proud mother. And I just want to share that. She's a sweet lady, but she's very proud of him and very warming and loving. I had the opportunity to meet her, so if you ever get a chance, she lives, of course, in his district down Black River Road, but I think it'll be a pleasure and a treat to talk with her. I want to say to this council, thank you. Thank you, commissioners and foundation members of Central Carolina. I think we took what's the old saying, one step forward for man and a giant leap for mankind. It's what's happened here today for our citizens, our children and our grandchildren when it comes down to higher ed. I say that because I don't take your vote for granted or lightly. And Mr. Bozard, I appreciate you standing up and joining the team. I really do. And I say thank you for that. And the foundation, just for your information, is really up and coming. Councilman Jones, I want to tell you thank you for recognizing Sid Isler. I did not know he was on the foundation. He's not always on my call list, so we don't communicate on a regular basis. But that foundation is up and going. There's new members on there, and they're really trying to get it back in a working order that you're accustomed to. With that, Mr. Chairman, I have no further.
Sir.
Just, Mr. Connell, I vacated that seat. Mr. Jones got tired of me kicking him under the table, and so he made me move over here, so that's all I have.
Mr. Bozard, sir, Al.
Thank you. I just want to comment a little bit about some of the discussion that had here under the public comments. To my knowledge, we don't have a list of what can be said. It's a matter of being respectful when you're up talking. Respectful for this board, for the people sitting out here and so forth. And I guess it's being just to each other respectful.
Amen.
We do not have a list of words, again, to my knowledge. And I just want to say, if you're going to talk up here, be respectful. But thank you.
Thank you, and I'll be very brief, but we're on the second and now going to the third reading of the budget. There's a lot more in that budget than we've talked about. We have security, county services, SROs, economic development, workforce readiness, our volunteer firemen, our regular firemen, our sheriffs. There's a whole lot in there, and it's all in Vision 2030. Vic and your team and Sandra, thanks for getting us this far along. There's a lot in there that we probably need to talk about and maybe brag about a little bit. I thank the media for trying to explain all this complicated stuff. It was given to us by our Constitution, 98 it was, that then developed into a thing called Act 388, and it causes massive headaches for the 7 men up here and for your staff. But I congratulate you, Vic. You delivered on a very good budget, and we'll see what survives on the third reading. Over to you, Vic.
No comment.
Mr. DeBose.
No comment.
Can I have a motion to dismiss ourselves?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Tucker first, Mr. Snodgrass second. No discussion?
Wait a minute. You didn't have nothing to say?
Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by raising your hand, and it's unanimous. Thank you. I'll be safe
Thank you,
going
gentlemen.
home.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.